Hey, 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 hey. Happy bank holiday. I don't know. Do we celebrate bank holidays like that? I don't know. Just bear with me. I'm just sorting out Rumble because it doesn't update the whatever it's called, the show notes. So I have to wait until it actually goes live and then tweak it. So 2 seconds and I will have finished. Okay, Coke. So I have had a lot of fun and a lot of frustrations doing this one, to be fair, because it took a while to kind of get Grok to be helpful. What I mean by that is I don't I just trying to get it okay, so I'm not making any sense at all whatsoever. So what I mean is I have kind of looked into Maddie. Okay, so bias check. I always thought the McCanns were the entire thing was dodgy as fuck, right? Always thought it was dodgy as fuck. Mainly because nobody ever really looked into the McCanns. Hey, I mean, properly, like nobody, like the police and stuff, they tried and they were all kind of kibosh, right? So when was it? It was 18 years ago, so I was an adult. So it's one of those stories that you kind of grow up with and you just kind of like give it a side eye. And then once I kind of learned about all the human trafficking stuff, you kind of look at it from new clear eyes, new perspectives, and just to kind of get it out the way, I don't think it has anything to do with the Podestas or Ghislaine or anything like that, right? So I'm not saying that they didn't, there's stuff that they did have a holiday home around there, and they didn't need to steal Maddie. I do not think at all she was abducted at all. Like, if you want to believe that Podestas and Ghislaine was involved, then what you're doing is buying into the abduction narrative. And I have not ever believed she was abducted, and nothing today's entire and yesterday's kind of sunshine googling, I say googling, but you know what I mean, it's not, I definitely didn't fucking use Google, and rather pinkied, just kind of compiling all of the things that I have looked into for years and years and years, and also found the site, an actual specific site that has all of the Portugal National Police. It's called like the PJ files. All of the official files and stuff are on there. So that was really exciting. But it took a while to kind of get Grok to be like, okay, we're gonna follow your train of thought, which I thought was very strange. It just shows the actual leverage behind this case. I had to push back a lot, even in creative mode. So I was using the her like statement the kind of the AI thing that I trained. That's how I'll do it all from now on, because it does kind of give us probabilities and action steps and things to look for. But I had to push back a lot, which genuinely surprised me. I thought where we were now, especially with all the investigations, deep dives, all of that type of information, I didn't realize how much of a stranglehold that there would be around this case on the internet, because obviously that's where Grok grabs its information from, just like free flowing from the internet. And I literally had to rip transcripts from YouTube videos. I had to go and grab all the initial statements, because whenever Grok hunted, it couldn't find it. Like, and it wasn't difficult for me to find the information. So this is what I just want to make really clear. Like, I knew where to go for the information, but the information wasn't hidden. It's not like back in 2020. So since 2020, they've been like systematically deleting stuff. This stuff is still available. And some of the stuff, like the PJ Files website, that was like on the first page of, Brave internet browser. So none of this was hidden, but actually kind of accessing it through an AI, it was all kind of shadowed. And for those of you who kind of like saw the whole AI creation process, in the creative mode, the AI is not supposed to push back. It's just supposed to kind of like capture it all and start kind of like turning it into succinct, like thematic, like kind of like doing a thematic analysis and kind of like pile it all together so that you can have your, hypothesis created with all of these different buckets of evidence kind of pulled in, systematic. It's kind of like an organization thing. Like, you just throw all the information at it. You can have conversations. It should be able to kind of grab bits of information and play devil's advocate as you go through. And then sometimes it does kind of like bring extra things that you've never thought of and send you down different rabbit holes. But I just wanted to kind of pre-frame that I had fun, but it was also a lot more difficult than I kind of expected. So that just shows, and actually this kind of feeds into one of the hypotheses, but it does just show how much influence they still have. And I say they, it's whoever they're backed by, right? But I don't think the Podestas have anything to do with Maddie's disappearance, because I always thought she died. I always thought she died. And watching Peter Hyatt being interviewed by Richard Hall, I think it was Richard Hall, and he was kind of looking into the 2011 interview they did with Sky News Australia, which, by the way, has been wiped from the internet. That has disappeared, and the transcripts disappeared, right? So that I couldn't find. So the only way you can watch that is if you're watching the actual Peter Hyatt kind of conversation. May he rest in peace. But as soon as he was kind of saying, yeah, they never left the apartment, and as soon as the Portugal police officer, I always forget his name, was saying like she never left the apartment. Like, that's that was the evidence. The evidence said there was never an abduction, and I'm going to go through all that. And I said, but I did come at this. So even though I had those bias, the point of the AI analysis is that you give all your biases, but then you do like self-regulation and you check it. And when I give you the probabilities, like, you're going to be like, no fucking way. But of course I was right. Throw that out there. 100% I was right. But yeah, so just be careful. Like, when you're using it, if you start to notice any kind of pushback, like, you do have to go into things with some kind of prior knowledge, or even just kind of like do some side search engineing, right? I know Google's become like a verb, but it grates me. Okay, but I had fun kind of revisiting a lot of things, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this episode too. And I'm just completely, because it's bank holiday, I'm just completely ignoring what's going on in the world, because right today I just don't care this weekend. Right, I don't care. We're going back to it tomorrow, find out the world's still turning, they're still trying to kill us all. Like, that's not going to change. We can take action and do stuff, but she's back in, I say she, Madeleine McCann, and all of that stuff is back in the news. It's 18 years since it happened. And so I was like, let's go. We did aliens last week. That was fun. Finding out that aliens existing is the most likely scenario. And I just some things we just can't impact right now, and there's no point kind of stressing. There's stuff going on in the background. We can all like do FOIs and do all of those things, but as the wheels are turning, we might as well have a bit of fun with it. So I did psychological profiles on Jerry, on Kate, and on the German. I googled him, the German, Christian Bruckner, because this is who they keep saying is the person responsible, right? So if you posit that they were abducted, you then need somebody who's likely to fit that. And if you look at the E-fits, yes, there's one that kind of looks like Ghislaine, but actually that's not the only E-fit, right? There's multiples, and one person did like kind of like gave descriptions, and both description came out completely different, right? So the E-fits, they're just, I think they were just done to, they needed to do that, and obviously to frame the narrative, but I also think it was done just to muddy the water and get people kind of linking it to Pizzagate and Epstein and all of those things, back when it was a conspiracy, just to kind of be like, oh, well, it's just crazy, it's just a conspiracy. Because if you link the Podestas and Ghislaine to Maddie, and then you can categorically prove that they didn't have anything to do with it. And I'm pretty sure there was proof that the brothers weren't, they might have had a holiday home, but they weren't there at the time. I can't remember because it was years ago when I looked at the Podestas being involved. I didn't even bother bringing that up again today and yesterday. You're still buying into the narrative, but what they do is they will say, oh, XYZ. So if you think about Carl Beach, right? Carl Beach is the easiest way to explain this entire thing. And Nancy Pelosi kind of says it's called a wrap-up smear. You just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So basically they threw Carl Beach into the mix of all of the pedophiles in Parliament, the elite pedophile rings, all of those things. And he's somebody who very probably was abused himself, but also was an abuser, right? So it didn't matter that there were like thousands of other actual victims. The media focused on Carl Beach, and then they just said, oh, well, it's all made up, right? Because this one person was a red herring, they completely dismissed all the other stuff. They did the same sort of thing with Cliff Richard, right? So at the time, they were going after, or lots of celebrities were like tumbling. And then there was the fake thing with the BBC finding out he was going to be arrested, but he wasn't actually there then. He was away. The police would have known he wasn't there because his passport would have flagged him out of the country. There is no way the police didn't know he wasn't there, right? Even so incompetent that they are, like a simple check would have known that he wasn't there. So I would know, but they didn't do that. Like there's just no way they didn't know. So that entire thing was staged, right? And if you notice what happened after that is all of the celebrities kind of like it just stopped, right? They stopped. I mean, yes, we've had whoever recently, but actually there was like loads of people kind of being rolled up, with Rob Harris, Jim, like all of those people were kind of like getting seriously looked at. They went after Cliff wasn't there. The BBC kind of did it all faked, all staged, all on the news, all on the telly, and then silence, right? So that is something that they do. So this is what's going on with that's what I think they did with the Podestas. And the Ghislaine E-fit, right? It's all smoke and mirrors to make you look stupid because she was never abducted in the first place. So I have kind of this, this is their current patsy, is this German guy, Christian Bruckner. So I did his psychological profile. So we're going to start with the psych profiles. And these are interesting. This is the first time I've ever done a psych profile on anyone, then uploaded transcripts, and the trustworthiness has like dropped, right? It usually goes up because there's congruency between what they're saying and doing. Even with like Khamenei, like this Iran supreme leader, supposedly descendant from Mohammed, like his trustworthiness score went up, right? Trump's went up. Netanyahu's went up. Like Keir Starmer's went up, Wes Streeting's went up, like all of these like sick, evil, twisted people, their trustworthiness score went up when I started introducing actual primary sources of them speaking. Jerry and Kate went down, right? As soon as you start feeding actual conversational information, like what they're saying, how they're saying it, when they're saying it, into the psych profile, goes down. So so this is, I love SCAN. So this is why the SCAN, the psych profile does a developmental, behavioral, psychological, biopsychosocial, developmental overview, but also then does SCAN analysis, right? So it enables you to understand perhaps somebody's human behavior, but then we actually see how they're functioning. And yes, my poor clients. This is literally what I'm doing. I'm thinking while they're talking. I'm like, wait, what did you just say that? Let's just dig into that little bit of information you just kind of like leaked out there. Okay, so I mean, I don't do it words. I kind of tuned into that word doesn't make sense in this conversation. I find it harder, and I say find it harder. I find it would take me a hell of a lot longer. Right, I pick up on everything, but like, oh wait, that doesn't belong there, that doesn't belong there. Whereas at least when you're having a conversation, it's only like the key bits that enable you to kind of dive into it. So Jerry McCann, born in 1968 in Glasgow, working class Catholic family. That's important. Both Jerry and Kate are Catholics. He was one of 5, studied medicine, met Kate during junior doctor training, married in 1998. They have 3 children. Maddie was born via IVF, or they were going for IVF. Oh no, they were going for IVF, and then they found out they were pregnant with Maddie. So they really struggled to have children. So that just puts into context Kate's frame of mind, right? So if you know anybody who's really struggled to have children, you're more likely to be more protective, right? You're more likely to cherish those children, and that will change the way that you kind of behave. And I don't mean like, I mean, sometimes people can be sick, twisted, and do awful things to the children that they desperately wanted, right? But with regards to children going missing from a child who was like accidental, we didn't want it, compared to a child you desperately wanted, right? That's what Maddie was. Their first child, they desperately wanted this child. So Maddie was born 2003, disappeared 3rd of May 2007, right? That's the official narrative. Twins Sean and Amelie, born 2005. And we do have to remember that, you know, this is a real, you know, there are real life family members who it must be awful to be those twins, right? To just see your sister's name plastered everywhere all the time, right? So they'll now be 21, and their entire life has been around their non-existent sister, as in no longer his sister. Now, something really interesting is that Jerry is close friends with Gordon Brown's brother, which will explain exactly why he got the PM of the time on the phone within the first few hours, who then had a conversation with the Portuguese president, prime minister, whoever it is, who then ensured that the McCanns were not investigated as they should be investigated at all. So this is about his kind of scan, and I've got a couple of statements to go through with you as well. This is like a full, like, in-depth Maddie session. So the 2011 Australian interview. So his language is measured and campaign orientated, like we'll never give up, strength and courage. High specificity on timelines in later statements, but early ones show past tense references to Madeleine, like very early on. They were talking about Madeleine in the past tense, which is not what happens normally. They distanced themselves. Well, Jerry distanced himself from what was going on, calling it the situation, focusing on him first, like for us and for Madeleine, like let's remember why we're here, like for us. And that's like grieving is you. Like if somebody's passed, you're like, you know, I'm so sad. I don't know how I'll get over this. And then the person becomes secondary because they're no longer here, right? So you first, I mean, you can be a complete narcissist 100%, or that you're not worried about the child anymore, right? Or you'd be like, if Maddie's been abducted, Maddie would come first, right? If you genuinely believe your child is alive and taken and undergoing some extreme horror somewhere, then they become your entire focus. Even guys, more so with women, but even guys, right? And should be highly prevalent in Kate's language because she desperately wanted a child. I mean, I'm not saying that Jerry didn't, but they're usually driven by the mum, you know. Okay, there was minimal raw child-centric urgency or panic. So his deception score is 64%. Past tense language, self-focus, premature composure, and narrative building indicate possible withheld information or guilty knowledge. So linguistic patterns consistently prioritize image and hope over immediate child distress, which is a significant red flag in missing child cases from close relatives. So the behavior, the language that he uses is completely contradictory to proven innocent family members who have also been in the same situation. However, it's congruent with other proven guilty family members when something's happened and that they've been responsible. So just to pre-frame, everybody's innocent until proven guilty, but the language indicates that they are way more aligned with knowing something that they are withholding, and they're talking about Maddie in a past tense, which logically indicates Maddie died, and they know Maddie died. Okay, so what is really missing is the emotion, is the terror, is the worrying, is the urgency, is the kind of something needs to happen, right? Happen now. Like why is nobody found her? Where is she? Like that all comes later, which is odd. Human behaviorally is odd. Okay. So Kate McCann was born, Nee Healy was born March the 5th, 1968, Liverpool, studied medicine at the University of Dundee and worked as a GP. Now this, I thought I've kind of highlighted this because everybody always talks about her as an anaesthetist, right? Which, you know, she became, you know, later, right? Which is important with regards to the sedation theory. However, knowing that she worked as a GP is also really... like nobody really talks about that. That's really interesting because she will also have had other knowledge. I mean, and the dad, right? You know, if a child becomes unwell, then you would want like doctor-based parents, okay? But the fact that she was a GP before an anaesthetist would give her a broad knowledge of many different things, right? So GPs, like they kind of have to know lots of different things rather than just being like completely tunnel visioned on one specific segment. So she would have had a much broader knowledge than people just talking about her being an anaesthetist would indicate, which is potentially important. So with her scan, which is so that's the statement analysis. So just with regards to the 2011 Australian interview, language is emotional and maternal, saying she's lovely. The absence still aches. Repetition of love and hope. However, generic phrases. So generic praise, self-focus for us and for Madeleine. So she's doing the same thing. Premature composure and narrative building appear when addressing the night of the disappearance. So patterns show emotional restraint with selective framing and minimal raw urgency. And this is like 2011. This is like years after. So if you really, either you've given up hope and you think, do you know what, like I've just come to terms with the fact that she's gone, or you already knew and now you've kind of moved on in the grieving process, right? But the absence would still ache, right? That's not, I really miss, like, it's not the language you use if somebody's missing. Like, you just don't. Okay, so deception score of 66. Words align with maternal grief, but grief are reduced by timeline scrutiny and linguistic patterns, past tense, distancing, and need to persuade, indicating possible held with information. Again, her statements lack raw urgency. She didn't speak until days later. So it was Jerry who addressed the media initially, right? That can be taken two different ways, right? Maybe she was so distressed that she was just being sedated, right? But also there's evidence, speculative evidence, that actually Kate had like black and greeny type bruising on her wrists, and also potential black eye, right? So when she spoke was like a couple of days later, which means potentially those like kind of restraint style bruisings, and if you think about, you find your child dead and you're freaking out. So I'm not saying that potential, so you would grab and like stop them, right? What are you doing? So if your child's missing, you're unlikely to be grabbing somebody by the arms, right? You're more likely to just like it. If you're going over it, like in my mind, where I heard that, my mind went, okay, well, she's been restrained from trying to do something with the child, the child, poor thing, rather than running around chasing, like trying to find a missing child, right? It's just, but again, again, Kate was like absent from the media until afterwards. Christian Bruckner, right? He is a menace to society, right? He is dangerous. He probably shouldn't be free to roam around. But do I think he had anything to do with Maddie? No. Well, one, because I think she died. But two, when we talk about the timeline, there's no evidence that he was anywhere near it. Okay, so Christian Bruckner was convicted of sexual abuse of children as a teenager in 1994, which is interesting. I say interesting, bear with me, because he was a teenager. And so children, they might, I haven't got like what the age is, right? So he was adopted, potentially, like you don't abuse children unless you're not abused, right? So we can he probably didn't have a very nice childhood. It doesn't mean you have to be an abuser, but it's just statistically, I mean, you don't just wake up one morning and decide you're going to abuse children. Like, you're conditioned, your brain's wired into that because it's been done to you. No, not all children will grow on to be abusers, but people who are abusers will have been abused. which is what the research shows. So he moved to Portugal in his late teens and lived in the Algarve region, working in the food industry and engaging in petty crime, burglary, drug trafficking, and sexual offences. Long criminal record spanning Germany and Portugal, including convictions for child sexual abuse. But that's when he was a teenager, which is important because the rape was a 72-year-old American woman. So he was convicted of rape in 2005, but it was a 72-year-old American woman. So those are two very different demographics, right? Yes, somebody like Jimmy Savile was boys, girls, dead, alive, old, young. Like he had no preference at all. But most offenders, right? Let's just ask Grok before I give you random bits of information. What is the statistical likelihood of a pedophile raping a 74-year-old woman? Very, very low. Here we go. By definition, true paedophilia is not primarily aroused by adults. Research consistently shows that sex offenders tend to specialize by victim age. Men who offend against elderly women are usually a distinct group from pedophiles and child molesters. Offenders against elderly victims 60 plus are even more likely to be opportunistic, violent, or anger-driven rather than motivated by pedophilic attraction. Pedophiles overwhelmingly target children with very low crossover to elderly victims. Studies comparing the two groups, so Brown et al. In 2018, show clear differences. Elderly victim offenders are generally younger, more physically violent, more likely to use weapons and cause injury, while child offenders show more planning, sexual motivation, and grooming behaviors. Like this is important when we start talking about his Christian's psychology, right? Crossover, a paedophile also offending against elderly adults does occur in some versatile offenders, but it is really uncommon. Buckner's 2005 rape of a 72-year-old woman, like Grok knew where I was going, is not typical paedophilic behavior. It fits better with a generalist sexual offender profile. Somebody offends against vulnerable victims when the opportunity arises, driven by power, control, or opportunism, rather than specific attraction to children. So for a diagnosed or preferential paedophile, the likelihood of raping a 72-year-old woman is statistically rare, low single-digit percentages in offender studies. It's far more common for such offenders to exclusively or predominantly target children, but definitely not a 72-year-old woman. So he has, here we go. Psychologically, the combination of adoption-related instability, early sexual offending, repeated criminality, and opportunistic lifestyle appears to have fostered a personality marked by impulsivity, entitlement, charm mixed with violence, and poor impulse control. So what drives him based on criminal history and associate reports is gratification, thrill-seeking, and survival through manipulation and crime, patterns of predatory behavior consistent with high-risk sexual offender profile. So he really is like a danger to society, but for him to meticulously plan, right? Because if the McCanns were going and checking every 90 minutes, right? Like you don't opportunistically break in, steal a child. Like you would have had to do some planning, some stalking, you would have to know their routines. You would have to like have a real need for this one child, right? And his psychological profile just does not fit with somebody who would like, if we're going to pretend that the abduction happened, his profile doesn't fit somebody like planning meticulously, abducting the child, being clever enough to not get caught. Like what he doesn't benefit from now having a 3-year-old child. He's not committed murder, right? He was doing petty crime, burglary, drug trafficking, sexual offenses, which can be, you know, maybe he's groped people, flashed people. I mean, there's no stalking, like, I mean, stalking, but again, like, his psychological profile doesn't fit at all. Like, he's opportunistic. If you know, she was playing in the middle of the street by herself in the middle of the night, would he maybe take her and ransom her for money? Potentially. But to kidnap her and take her away doesn't fit. I mean, okay, so let's just frame it. I haven't interviewed him. Like, I haven't done a full psychological profile, but this is just based on public information and knowledge, what we know about him. He doesn't fit at all. So this is ludicrous that he's now the focus, right? So he has given limited public statements, mostly denials through lawyers or brief media encounters. Every single time he's been asked, he's very explicit. I had nothing to do with it, right? Which, you know, in SCAN, on the surface, he's very explicit. I had nothing to do with it. However, he also has kind of done the same thing and then been proven guilty, right? So he does lie, but there's never been any kind of leakage. He's never kind of elaborated on anything, and he might have learned not to elaborate because then he gets in trouble, right? But he doesn't fit. There isn't anything else I can say about that other than he just doesn't fit the narrative. He doesn't fit. So that's that. And we'll also find out that actually, so I mean, his deception score is 55 out of 100. He was abused. So it's the way, this is what I mean by Grok getting trapped in the narrative. It says here, show major mismatches with his documented criminal history of sexual offences against children and women in the Algarve region during the relevant time period. During the relevant time period, he was sexual offences against women. Against children was when he was a teenager. So his preferences has changed. Perhaps he doesn't have any preferences and it's just all opportunistic. When he was a teenager, he would have been around children. Now that he's an adult, it's easier for him to kind of get adults, right? And that's why he took the 72-year-old woman, because they were just there, right? And somebody who just attacks somebody, abuses somebody because they just happen to be there, it is absolutely not going to go to the effort of planning meticulously. And if you were going to kidnap, why wouldn't you take all 3 children? Especially if they were sedated. And I will prove to you that they're sedated in a way that everybody else has just ignored this one piece. Well, that I've seen, everybody else has ignored this one piece of evidence, which is what I had the biggest argument with Grok over until he got where I came from, because Grok's an AI, not a human, right? So so the children were sedated. If you were going to kidnap them for money, ransom them, you take all 3, right? It'd be really easy. Like, they're tiny. I mean, you could take one and come back for the others, right? And if she was kidnapped, why wasn't she screaming? Right? There's no reports of any child screaming, right? So then he would have hit maybe knocked her out, right? So where's the evidence of something being used to knock somebody out? And there actually isn't any evidence that anybody ever broke in, right, at all. So we'll talk about the windows being open, closed, all of those things. So basically, so we did the three. So those are the three. They're the kind of like, you know, there's the two people who were definitely involved, and the one person they're now trying to say is involved through deceptive means. Okay, so I did a scan analysis on Jerry McCann's first public statement, and also on Kate and Jerry McCann's joint first public statement. So Jerry's was on, like, so Jerry's is between the 4th and 5th, and then Kate was on the 6th. So it supposedly happened on the 3rd, Jerry's statement the 4th, and then Kate first speaks on the 6th. That's like 2-3 days later. So the statement, the official statement that they put, the statement they put out is, words cannot describe the anguish and despair that we are feeling as the parents of our beautiful daughter, Madeleine. We request that anyone who may have any information related to Madeleine's disappearance, no matter how trivial, contact the Portuguese police and help us get her back safely. Please, if you have Madeleine, let her come home to her mummy, daddy, brother, and sister. As everyone can understand how distressing the current situation is, we ask that our privacy is respected to allow us to continue assisting the police in their current investigation. Which sounds okay, right? Sounds okay. But the first statement is like, me, right? Okay, so here we go. So we had, here's the scan breakdown. First up, past tense usage for a missing child, which is a really strong red flag. So our beautiful daughter, Madeleine, uses present tense correctly in the first sentence. However, the overall statement quickly shifts to passive completed narrative, Madeleine's disappearance. In innocent parental statements about missing children, especially in the first hours or days, there's usually strong present tense focus on the child's current suffering. So what is she going through right now? Is she scared? Does she have a favorite toy? You know, is she crying and she can't get to mummy and daddy? Like, you know, those types of conversations. There is zero reference to Madeleine's current state or experience. This is a classic sensitivity indicator in missing child cases from parents with guilty knowledge about something, right? Second red flag, lack of maternal or paternal urgency or raw concern for the child, which is a major red flag. No sensory or emotional details about Madeleine. Is she cold? Is she crying for us? What must she be thinking? The appeal, if you have Madeleine, let her come home, is polite and formal rather than desperate or visceral. Genuine parents in fresh trauma usually show raw panic or bargaining with vivid imagery. Focus shifts quickly to help us get her back safely, and then to our privacy and assisting the police. The priority order is self-family image, police cooperation, privacy with Madeleine, and privacy with Madeleine's immediate welfare absent. Thirdly, distancing language and pronoun usage. We are feeling as the parents of our beautiful daughter, Madeleine. Formal and third person, like the parents, right? The current situation instead of Madeleine's missing or our daughter taken, which is classic distancing. The plea is directed outward. If you have Madeleine rather than inward, our baby is gone. And remember, they were about to go through IVF because they'd been trying for a while. So it's even more like cold, really. Number 4, need to persuade, narrative building. Words cannot describe the anguish and despair. A common rhetorical device to tell the audience about the emotion rather than show it through raw details, no matter how trivial, is unnecessary padding in a life or death appeal. And unnecessary padding is like red flaggy. The final sentence focuses heavily on privacy and assisting the police. This is self-protective language that appears prematurely. And fifthly, absence of expected elements. So there's no vivid memories of Madeleine from that day. No, she was wearing XYZ clothing. She's got, and even if they've got an image out, they'll be like, she's got short brown hair. She doesn't like eating XYZ. If you've got her, please make sure like she's fed. She like it just like it's just weird. No plea directly to Madeleine, like, Maddie, if you can hear us, we love you. Like, they didn't even say, Maddie, we love you. If you've run away, like, I mean, because we didn't, like, if there was no abduction, did she run? Right? Did she get lost? Is she just wandering around the streets and lost? Right? Maddie, we love you. If anybody found her, look after her, keep her warm. We'll come for her, no matter like where you are. Like, those are the types of conversations. Like, they literally didn't even say we love you. That's bad. That's really bad. Croc didn't even pick up on that, but that's really bad. Like, that's what you'd expect, right? Mummy and daddy love you. We're there for you. No expression of what the parents are physically doing. We haven't slept. We're searching every street. The tone is remarkably composed and structured for parents whose 3-year-old vanished hours earlier. Like, really composed. This statement, so overall scan conclusion, this statement shows clear linguistic indicators of deception or withheld information, the lack of raw parental urgency, past tense framing of the child, distancing language, premature focus on privacy and police cooperation, and narrative building, telling rather than showing emotion, are all consistent with parents who know more than they're saying, specifically that the child is beyond immediate rescue. Really important. The statement's polished, controlled, and strategically focused on public image and investigation assistance rather than visceral parental panic. This does not prove guilt in the legal sense, but in pure scan terms, it's highly inconsistent with the expected language of innocent, terrified parents in the first hours after a child's disappearance. So, deception indicator score on this statement, strong. High probability of withheld information. Okay, so then this is Kate and Jerry McCann's joint first public statement. So Kate says, Jerry and I would just like to express our sincere gratitude and thanks to everybody, particularly the local community here, who've offered so much support. I couldn't ask for more. I just want to say thank you. Please continue to pray for Madeleine. She's lovely. Like, not say, like, I love you, Madeleine. No. Jerry says, from today's service, the thing we're going to take from this is strength and courage and hope. When we continue to hope for the best possible outcome from this for us and for Madeleine, thank you. Right? Hoping for the best possible outcome from this for us. Oh, and Madeleine. Right? So what is the best possible outcome for them? Is that they don't get fucking found out. And nobody realizes that they don't lose their house. They don't lose their 2 other children. They don't lose their jobs, right? They don't become social pariahs. Who on earth states we hope for the best possible outcome for us? Like, before their missing child. Please continue to pray for Madeleine. She's lovely. That's so weird as a statement, right, from a mum who desperately wanted a child. The first thing first statement, right? Thank you so much, everybody who's been looking. Fine, people grieve different. People behave differently in emotional situations. But Madeleine's right at the end. Jerry's first. In her statement, Jerry's first. Maddie's right at the end. Like, at the afterthought. And Maddie's an afterthought in Jerry's sentence too. So, here we go. First up. Past tense, detached framing of the missing child, strong red flag. So Kate says she's lovely. Technically present tense, but generic and minimal. No vivid, urgent, present tense concern for Madeleine's current state. Is she scared right now? Is she crying for us? What's she going through? And this is because this is what you see in proven innocent families, right? Versus proven guilty families. And just to reiterate, because they're very fucking litigious, this is just based on your words. Like, this is just based on your words, using a technique that the Israeli intelligence agency and lots of detective agencies around the world successfully use to convict criminals. Just throwing that out there. So Jerry refers to the best possible outcome for us and for Madeleine. Like, when I read that, I was like, what the fuck? Like, even before like I'd done scan, I was like, yeah, this like you're just reading it. It's just is wrong. So treating her as a separate entity in a hoped for future rather than an immediate living child in danger. Expected in innocent parents, raw present focus panic about the child's immediate suffering, and it is largely absent. Second, self-focus and premature positive framing, a major red flag. So the statement opens with gratitude to the community, and I couldn't ask for more. Like, well, I mean, I would be asking for more. Like, is anybody else going to help? Like, thank you for these guys, but like, you know, if anybody's got dogs, if you've got like a spare hour, can you come and help? Like, if you spot anything, like she was wearing, like, you just would. Right? If you've got the media on you, you're going to take advantage, like real advantage of that opportunity. Emphasis on what we're going to take from this. So the service is an emotional processing and strength and courage and hope. It's just weird. It's just weird. This is remarkably composed and forward looking for parents who 3-year-old vanished like a couple of days earlier. Genuine fresh trauma usually shows disorientation, desperation, or raw anguish, not polished gratitude and hope extraction. Right? They have already processed Maddie's not coming back. Like, because if you haven't processed that, you don't behave in this way. Number 3, distancing language and pronoun usage. Jerry and I would just like to express a formal third person distancing from the start for us and Madeleine, us before the child. Yeah, I mean, that was so blatant. The thing we're going to take from this, abstracting the abduction into personal growth experience. Like, I mean, again, just how bad is that? Right? This is the thing we're going to take from this experience. Like, what? Your child was abducted 2 days ago, and you're already telling us how you're processing this, and you're going to grow from this. And this is one of those situations that will make you stronger as a family. Like that doesn't happen in 48 hours after child going missing. Okay, when you think about statistically, like the window, right? So let's just get the numbers, get the actual numbers. In abduction cases, thinking about the statistics of being returned alive, what's the probability from 0 hour to 72 hours later? Okay, so this sermon ceremony that they did was the 6th, right? Here we go. So within 3 hours. Okay, so here's a clear evidence-based breakdown of the statistical likelihood of a child being returned alive in non-family strange abduction cases. So the most relevant category for high-risk cases like Madeleine, focusing on the critical first 72 hours. So these are key statistics from the FBI, NCMEC, and other major studies. So these numbers refer specifically to cases where the child is murdered, which is absolutely the worst outcome. Overall recovery rates for all reported abductions are much higher because most non-family abductions are short-term, so sexual assault then release or brief taking. So within the first 3 hours, 74 to 76% of abducted children who are eventually murdered are killed within the first 3 hours. That is the most dangerous window, and the chance of survival drops sharply after this point. Right? So we're now on like 48 hours later. So the first 3 hours, you not got much chance of getting your child back, which is really, really depressing for anybody out there watching this. Within 24 hours, 88 to 91% of murdered abducted children are dead within 24 hours. Within 48 to 72 hours, by 72 hours, the vast majority, well over 95% of children who are going to be murdered have already been killed. The probability of being found alive after 72 hours in a genuine high-risk stranger abduction is very low, single digit in most studies for the remaining unsolved cases. So the overall chance of a reported missing child is recovered alive is extremely high, 99%. But this includes runaways and family abductions. For stereotypical stranger non-family abductions, the rare high-risk cases, the dynamics are much worse if the intent is harm. Time is truly critical. The first 3 hours are decisive for many cases. In the McCann context, if Maddie was abducted by a stranger on the evening of May the 3rd, the statistical odds of her still being alive after 72 hours, so by May 6th, which is when this joint statement was made, were already quite low according to these studies. The longer she remained missing without any ransom demand or credible sighting, the worse the prognosis became. Okay, so if we then go back to the German, the Christian guy, who was an opportunistic person, they would have had a ransom by there and then, right? Or the child would have been abused and returned, right? So if he was just after sexual gratification, Maddie returned, or Maddie was killed, and then low IQ, low impulse control, opportunistic person, didn't brag to anyone, didn't drink. He was trafficking drugs. So he's in that kind of world where there was no leakage at all for over 10 years. When they started looking at him in 2007. Oh, no, wait, sorry. When did they start looking at him? Let me get my dates mixed up. When did she go missing? 2003? Was she born in 2003? Oh, dear. This is what happens when you got all this information in one go. So she went missing in 2007. Apologies. It was who? Yeah. Okay. Apologies. So, but he was opportunist, right? He was opportunistic. There was no ransom. What's he going to do with the 3-year-old child? I mean, it just doesn't make sense for a start. Like start or finish. What they say in America, period, the end. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so now what was I up to? It's annoying. Oh, we're going through the scans. Let me just finish off the scan. Oh, scan breakdown. This one. Okay. Oh, I've lost my place. Yes, okay, because then I got sidetracked, didn't I, with the statistics. Yeah. Yes, yeah, we'll get to the timing. Richard D. Hall, that's And if you want to watch Peter Hyatt's breakdown of the 2011, I think it's Sky News Australia, you have to watch the Richard D. Hall. I mean, that's available on YouTube, right? It's on multiple YouTube channels. But the actual interview, I couldn't find it, right? Because I wanted to run just the interview through Scan, so it wasn't influenced by Peter Hyatt. So I had to just like use the entire transcript of the kind of documentary conversation, but then did scans on the very first two. Myself, but with Grok help, right? Because those are the most important. So if we'd have had the 911, 999 tape, that one would be like really powerful. But I didn't have that one. So, but that's cool. Yeah, Richard Hall's was great. And we'll yeah, the timing and from that conversation with Peter Hyatt that he did, Peter Hyatt said straight up, they're telling us the timing's wrong. And then there's been more evidence in the last 12, 18 months to prove that the timing was wrong, which is cool. But yeah, I didn't believe the story, but that's cool. So they've also got so where were we? So absence of fresh trauma. Oh yeah. Oh, that's where I got distracted, because they're talking about personal growth experience, right? So can you imagine with those statistics, first 3 hours, and they will know this, right? They will have been told this by the police, because the police, okay, just to clarify, the local police were there within minutes, the national police was there within an hour, and the entire town and community were searching for Maddie. So when you watch the 2011 interview, they explicitly state nothing was done for 12 hours. And if you read our media, they say nothing was done for the first 12 hours. So first up, that's complete bullshit. That is actually not what happened. The police were there within a couple of minutes. The national police were there within an hour, and everybody was searching, right? And we know there was confusion and searching by what I think is the most critical piece of evidence to prove that they were sedating their kids. Which comes from the nanny's testimony. So once we get there, you'll be like, shit, she's right. And everybody's ignored this. I mean, they kind of mention it in passing, but nobody kind of had the whole like brain lock. So yeah, but it's so 48 hours after, child missing, child they desperately wanted, so much so they were going to have IVF. They're talking about it being a personal growth experience. At this point, statistically, she's been killed, abducted, murdered, and killed, right? I don't know anyone who is talking about a personal growth experience when potentially they got at the back of their mind, potentially there's still a glimmer of hope that we will catch her back, because we haven't hit the 72 hours yet. It's teeny tiny percentage we might get her back if we kick up enough of a fuss, right? Saying I couldn't ask for more, right? Please pray for Madeleine. It's really placid. The overall tone, so needing to persuade and narrative building, the overall tone is structured and almost scripted, with a clear message of gratitude and hope rather than visceral parental terror. So unless Kate was, sedating herself, right? Potentially she was taking something to stay calm, but a calm, placid demeanor, it just is the most obvious conclusion that comparison right now is like Erica Kirk, right? The way that Erica Kirk behaved. and people do behave differently. But in Erica's case, like, Charlie was dead, right? Not missing. So maybe she'd have behaved it you don't know. Just it's like that's odd behavior. Everybody's like, the fuck's going on with this woman? That's odd behavior. So number 5, absence of expected elements in fresh trauma. So no sensory memories of Madeleine from the day, no direct plea to Maddie herself, no description of frantic searching or physical emotional state. We haven't slept. We were searching every single street. And at this point, they had done that, right? So in Jerry's first statement, that was like very early on, before the mass searches, before all of that stuff, right? The second one is the police had been there, and people had been searching like through the night. We've searched the local area. We're going to be searching. We're going to be expanding. If there's anyone else like from further afield who wants to help, I'm grateful. Like at no point did they say I'm grateful for everybody who's helped search. They're very specific. We're grateful for all of the support, right? But no mention of searching, right? Which would be key. That would be in the vocabulary if you believed. I need to find a new home for this thing. If you believed your child was missing and you were hunting for them, you would mention hunting, looking, seeking, seeing, missing. Like those words would leak, right? They would just come out naturally. So the absence of that information is as important as the actual words that they're using. So overall scan conclusion, this joint statement shows strong linguistic indicators of deception of the withheld information. The premature composure, self-focused gratitude, generic minimal child concern, and narrative building of hope are highly inconsistent with the expected raw child-centric panic of innocent parents in the first few days after a 3-year-old's disappearance, because she's only 3. Right? So does she have nappies? She would have soiled her clothing. Is she starving? Is she like just the actual things that go through your mind when a child has gone missing? Like, if you've ever, if you have children or you've ever like looked after children and they go missing for like a few hours, like not even a few hours, like they go missing in the supermarket, they're on the wrong supermarket aisle, right? You are frantic. Now imagine you then like ramp that up, like they haven't just gone missing for a teeny tiny bit, like you've not seen them at all now for days. But you are not going to be cool, calm, and collected at all, unless you already know what's happened. The language prioritizes public image, community relations, control positivity over immediate visceral parental distress. This does not constitute legal proof of guilt, but in pure scan terms, it is a significant red flag. Pattern commonly seen where parents have guilty knowledge or are concealing critical details. Deception indicators on this statement, strong, high probability of withheld information and guilty knowledge. And then Grox noted, this aligns with the pattern seen in the Jerry statement and the 2011 interview. So the controlled, gratitude-heavy tone so soon after the event is particularly notable for scan purposes. So the very first 2 public conversations, huge red flags. And then when they're rebuilding the story, right, so people started to question very early on and they didn't like it. So then they came out in front and started doing documentary, putting their side across, like, we've been attacked. We've been, we're trying to vindicate ourselves, and building a story. They're doubling down on the story. So even 4 years later, there was just like lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. Okay. So, I went through, I did all the creative stuff. I did profiles, I did scan analysis on some of the statements. I did more statements. There was also the, I don't know, there was hours and hours and hours and hours of documentaries that I watched. And I kind of like grabbed random bits of information as well. So this is the final structured intelligence analysis of the Madeleine McCann disappearance. So this is like the end result. which pulled out. Just so you know, just to reiterate, the whole abduction thing, that percentage is like not great for the media, for everybody out there. It is like right at the bottom. So anybody who thought it was hinky, like you're like, what's the phrase? With the beginning with an I. Intuition. Your intuition is strong, right? The force is strong. Okay, so this report integrates the complete 6-step process applied to my query and dominant belief. So my dominant belief, just to reiterate, was accidental death via parental drugging and sedation on May the 2nd, so that's the timeline, while parents were absent, followed by a cover-up motivated by potential sexual abuse. I do believe there was some sexual abuse going on, but also they wouldn't want it to come out that they were sedating their children, that they would potentially have their children removed, social services involved, because if social services get involved and they then examine their 2 remaining alive children, like so the snowball effect of it coming out, like the cover up, they literally had to. This is life or death for them and their reputation and everything about it. So we have the Gasper ignored reports. They were the couple who went on holiday with them in 2004. They went to the Leicestershire police as soon as this all came out about Maddie. And there was a very interesting statement we'll get to, which is another vein suggesting sexual abuse. There was the Peter Hyatt scan analysis and certain words which also indicate some kind of sexual abuse. It flags sexual abuse should be looked at. They were supposedly swingers doing dodgy shit. Anyway, so Hyatt's like all of his into all of his kind of breakdowns uploaded. Amaral, that's the police officer's information. So the dogs, the fridge, what was going on the night before. We've also got witness statements, loads and loads of different information kind of being pulled in. So all analysis draws exclusively from the atomic evidence base harvested across primary sources. So while some of it is kind of like reported second, like, so there was we're not using media reports, we're like pulling actual pieces of information and evidence, actual them speaking, and witness testimony, police files, and them speaking, right? We're not using like hearsay, and even when we're using like extra testimony, it's not secondhand, it's what they've actually said. Okay, which is key. We've got Pat Brown's. So she is a profiler, and she kind of put forward the profile with regards to sofa sedation and inconsistencies and body movement. And she put a book out, and she was sued by the McCanns. Just to kind of like, so Peter Hyatt was never sued by the McCanns, and I don't think Richard Hall was ever sued by the McCanns. There's also, what's his name? Darn it. There's another guy who's done a book recently breaking down, Bernd Stellander. And you can watch both of his interviews with Johnny English. Is it Johnny English? He sounds Glaswegian. Pretty sure his name's Johnny English. He's like blown the timeline thing wide open. He's a ex-detective who uses SCAN as well. So but he was actually trying to look for, he went to kind of figure out where would the body be buried, and then he ended up realizing, wait a minute, the timeline's off, and then hunted into that. So kind of actually, you know, years later, concluding exactly the same as Peter Hyatt did when Peter Hyatt examined that one interview, but then went and kind of like investigated it to find witnesses and, you know, prove stroke disprove it. And that's a key thing when we do this, the analysis of competing hypothesis, like Grok does his best to disprove my theory, right? And we'll pull extra evidence, right? We'll pull statistics. So I'm giving Grok, this is my hypothesis, and Grok is going to throw everything at me to say it's not true. And whatever we cannot disprove, the one that's disproven the most becomes the main hypothesis. So it's really key to reiterate that. This is not about we did prove my hypothesis, which was created over lots of investigation and filtering out information that just kind of didn't fit. But it was not about just being like proving Katie's right? This is like, we're looking at all of this, and this is where we end up. So Pat Brown, that's she's got a 2-hour interview on YouTube somewhere as well, which is quite good. And FYI, Andrew Gold, who I kind of like his podcasts. Like, he introduces me to people I've never met before. He did an interview with some absolute twonk talking about Madeleine McCann recently, like, I mean, in the last week or so, because I was like, oh, I'll just kind of watch the new stuff, to kind of like doing, because I said a few weeks ago I wanted to do into Maddie, so I wanted to kind of like refamiliarize my stuff. That absolute knobhead was just like, she didn't die, she was abducted. That's his conclusion is she was abducted, dying. Like, Andrew says, well, what about the theory that she fell, her head? And he's just like, it's absolute nonsense. It was like, what evidence have you been fucking looking at, mate? Because it really isn't absolute. It's the only thing that kind of makes sense, right? The only thing that makes sense. So here we go. Just because the McCanns are litigious, no single hypothesis reaches legal proof. There's been no body recovered, but patterns do emerge clearly. Right? The Crocs put that in as a statement saying, you need to say this, Kate. Pretty much. Okay, I've said it. There we go. Okay, so here we go. Any percentages I'm going to present represent reasoned probabilistic estimates based on matrix convergence, sensitivity, robustness, evidence quality, and alternative viability, expressed as approximate ranges with overlaps possible. These are not absolute. They reflect current data and would shift with new verifiable primary evidence, okay? Which is true, right? If something else happens, then we have to shift it. Okay, so the hypothesis is, so I'll give you them first, and then we'll kind of go into why. Yeah, let's give you the numbers. I'm just going to scroll right down to the numbers. 2 secs. Oh, where are my numbers? Oh, here we go. Okay, so hypotheses. We have 6. Hypothesis number 1, that she died on May the 2nd, so the night before. Parental accident and cover-up, right? So it was an accident. The McCanns freaked out and they covered it up, and it happened the day before. This has the strongest matrix convergence, multiple linchpins, robust under sensitivity, so timeline shifting, dog debates, do not collapse other threads, right? So it's strong, but not strong enough to completely kibosh everything else. It does align with my dominant belief, but is also the simplest explanation. So it does require a coordinated staging, but it does fit medical pragmatism profiles, right? So if you've had, okay, so we have to just think about this. If you just think your child's just been abducted, you've got 3-hour window where 75-76% your child comes back. Sorry, 25% chance your child comes back, because 75-76% of them just don't come back, right? If you are operating in that closed off frontal lobe position where your fight or flight, your fear response is on high alert, your capacity to think logically, linearly, have good cognitive conversations with somebody, it does not match. However, if you have spent 24 hours coming to terms with the fact that your child's not coming back, going into I need to fix this mode, which is men do very well, and then you've kept the wife away for 2 days to calm the fuck out, right? Because if your child's missing, you would have the wife would be fighting. There's no way you would keep them from camera at all, right? They fought for this to get this child in the first place, gonna go get IVF, and now the mother's just absent, not making a statement, right? Because she's too distraught. Why are you too distraught? Is because you're grieving, not because you're fighting for your child that you think is alive and needs to be. You need to be out searching, right? Like it doesn't make sense. But so the Jerry medical pragmatism, the way that he functioned, the way that he behaved, the way that he got in front of the media, shaped the narrative, that's likely, right? But because they already know, right? So that has got a probability of 65 to 70%. There's no less than 50% wiggle room on this week's. And by the way, on that point, Ebola being like shaped narrative has gone right up to like 72% based on everything they're doing. So doesn't mean it's not going to be dangerous, but it just means that because now the strains changed. Did everybody spot that? The fact that everybody kept saying, oh, wait a minute, this strain, we have this vaccine. They went, oh, no, it's not that strain. It's this other strain where, like, we don't know anything about it. Like, we first identified it in 2007. That was, like, almost 20 years ago. But we've never found a cure for this one specifically. It's also one that's been worked on by Porton Down and Fort Detrick since the 50s and 60s. Well, sorry, 70s, because, didn't appear until the 70s. And there still isn't a cure, right? So we should all be demanding our money back. But anyway, Grok over the hantavirus, over Ebola, over quite a few other things, over the elections, over Iran. It was only with the continued narratives did Grok then start to kind of come up with where we were, right? This is just bullshit and this is being shaped, right? Straight up, 100%. Okay, you're on. You're right with this one. You can have it. 65-75%. 65 to 70%. Okay, hypothesis 2, May the 3rd, parental group accident cover. So her dying on May the 3rd, 15 to 20%. Moderate support. There's gaps, there's linguistic patterns, but weakened by night before bag witness, crying incident, but also the way in which everybody was behaving that evening, right? The way that they behaved should be the biggest indicator of what happened, right? Hypothesis 3. So the genuine stranger abduction. So this is like the German or the Podestas or whoever else you want to throw in the mix. 5 to 10%. Consistent negatives across internal forensic linguistic witness evidence. And with Bruckner specifically, he fits the opportunity, but no direct link. Like literally no forensic evidence places him in the apartment. He's an opportunistic, right? If he was grabbing a child, there would have been fibers. There were fibers, footprint, like none of that exists at all. To like, so what? So somebody like got in through the window, stole the child, came back, cleaned everything up in a 90-minute window. I mean, doesn't seem possible. Doesn't seem possible in the same way. Maddie dying on the same night and being cleaned and covered up is also not possible, which is exactly what Jerry says in his 2011 interview. He says something very along the lines of, well, how did we kill her and cover it up in 90 minutes? You tell me how, right? Well, you didn't, which is how like Hyatt was like, well, they obviously didn't do it that night, did they? Didn't do it then. He said then. It could have been earlier in the day. It could have been earlier in the day, but unlikely. And there's evidence to prove that it was the night before. But in the same way, the McCanns couldn't have killed her that night and covered it up in 90 minutes. A stranger couldn't have abducted her and come back and covered it up. Right? If Jerry's saying specifically that there's no way they could have covered it up in that 90 minutes without being noticed or being like anybody figuring it out, then how does they expect an opportunistic stranger to do the exact same thing? Like those two things are mutually exclusive. If one can, the other can. So then they just put themselves back in the frame, right? This is why the whole abduction. So I can see them coming up with the idea of an abduction during the height of emotion, whether your brain's not working, right? Critical thinking, planning, consequences, all of that doesn't happen, right? But then once you're stuck on the idea and you're in cleanup mode and then you're planning everything out, it's too late. It's too late to go back on it now. Like, and what else are you going to say, right? Because if she died of natural causes and if they needed to call an ambulance, like what would the ambulance find, right? In order for death, and we found this with Jill Dando, in order for, so it's not the police won't pronounce somebody dead. It has to be a medical professional. So with a child dying unattended in a like this is the whole worm bag of, what is it? Bag of worms? It's not a bag. You don't have a bag of worms, do you? I don't know. Anyway, this is the whole like this is the crux, right? So it's something. So it just either they were able to do it and cover it up in 90 minutes, or the abduction happened and they covered it up in 90 minutes because there was no forensic evidence in the flat at all whatsoever to prove an abduction or to prove murder or death. Neither of those things could have happened in 90 minutes with cleaning it up. Which is weird because nobody else seems to be kind of like figured that out. Like that's, and I'm shit at maths, but I do know how long it takes to clean up something, right? It takes me half an hour to do like mine and Matt's dishes, right? So when you think about cleaning an entire fucking apartment, or if you're an opportunistic, low intelligent, petty criminal who like abuses whoever's available, you're then going to come back and like what? Like come back and clean the scene. So they don't make sense. Hypothesis 4, group-wide complicity, 20 to 25%. So it does overlap with H1. There's strong via tapas pack of silence, one active member per family in the media, and they all took money from the media. And that foreign detective, I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to keep calling him foreign detective because I can't remember their names. He states that they all took money from the media, so they're all complicit in fraud. So none of them could speak out because they could get done for fraud, right? So it's a really great way to trap trap them. The nanny, priming, but actually nanny will come into it differently. This is an extension rather than the standalone. So H4 is like an add-on. Then we've got H5, institutional political shielding of innocence. So 25 to 30. So this is me talking about the fact that we had Gordon Brown straight away. We had the initial Portugal police were looking into the family. Then the Portuguese policeman was removed away from the investigation. All Met-based investigations were looking for the abductor, never once looked into the family members, right? So that like, in order for the Met police to get, and we've had 15 million pounds has been funded like into this, right? In order for the Met police to take taxpayers' money and not investigate the McCanns in a child abduction, considering the vast majority of children are harmed via neglect, parental neglect, versus stranger abduction. Stranger abduction occurs in 1 to 3% of cases. The rest is harm in the home, right? So as soon as a child disappears, like the family are the focus, right? So the Portuguese police did what they were supposed to be doing. They focused on the family. They focused on the inconsistencies in the conversations and the statements, and they were pulled off. And then we funded lots of money to find the abductor, which has got 5 to 10% statistical probability, right? We haven't focused any money on something that has 65 to 70% statistical probability, which actually, in the reality of the world, and child abduction versus home in the harm is 1 to 3% versus like 97 to 99%. Whether it, I mean, I don't believe they murdered her. Like, I don't believe it was intentional murder. But I do believe she died and it was covered up. And I do believe there's potential sexual abuse, which we'll get into. Thanks, Linda. Oh, yeah, probably. And everybody and anybody, right? I don't mind. But what are they going to say? Like, they created their own psychological profiling scan, like, based on their like decades of working with, like, I mean, how like, and their own AI like intelligence analyst based on, like, I mean, or they, you know, somebody like, you absolutely could go to GitHub, right? Oh, I keep forgetting to stick the GitHub links. Apologies. You could go to GitHub and steal the thing, right? 100% you could go and do that thing. But then how are you going to say that you wouldn't? The behavioral inconsistencies, a lot of the behavioral inconsistencies I'm talking about didn't come through the profile. It came through my knowledge of human behavior. So they could rip me off, like, for sure. But they wouldn't be able to have the same conclusions. So let me just grab those GitHubby things. There we go. Katie Woodland. There you go. And then I will make sure I stick them in the show notes for the next few weeks, like forever. Not just gonna like give them to you and then like steal them, right? Like, I think it's useful, right? It's such a great way to help really understand stuff. But yeah, Poulton, I don't. The fact that she said live in an interview she's not afraid of anything, she's just not afraid because she believes she's being protected from a higher power. Even if you've grown up in a household where you have been involved in So her mum was a medium or something along those lines. So if you've been involved in like the spiritual realm since childhood, then you will know how fucking dangerous it is, right? So the only way you would ever catch me saying something like, I'm not worried about being killed, I feel like I'm being protected by a higher power, is because I know I'm being protected and I'm fucking running cover, right? Like 100%. And after what they did to Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk's not the only one they took out, right? How it would be easy. So why do I feel like I'm gonna get murdered? 100% not, because my audience, like you guys, like we're tiny, teeny little, like, and I've already been vilified and destroyed by the media, so I'm classed as unreliable, a kook. They've already like done the groundwork for discrediting me. They did it years ago, right? Multiple times. So do I fear? No. I don't even fear. And the other reason why I don't fear death, personally don't fear death, is because I tried to kill myself, right? But do I sometimes think, holy shit, should I be talking about this thing? Yeah. I'm not unafraid, right? Somebody who has no fear, like that's concerning. Really concerning, but we're not talking about Sonia Bolton. And I actually haven't included any of the information or conversations she's had, because I just don't find her, I don't count her as a credible witness. She wasn't witness to anything, right? So she's not useful, because she wasn't witness to anything. And we've used actual testimonies. So yeah, went off on a tangent there. Thanks. Okay, so then we've got hypothesis 6, so sexual abuse related leading to accident cover, right? So this is 10 to 15%. And again, but it's an enhancer to hypothesis 1. So it is plausible. And this is Grok pulling the information together, saying it is plausible that there was sexual abuse in the home. Potentially, neglect does help explain some of the things, potentially. So it's sexual abuse or neglect, right? And because we've never examined or never found the body, the McCanns weren't properly interviewed to that extent. The interviews were shut down very early on. They did a couple of interviews, but they didn't kind of help or answer questions, because they can't answer. The very first interviews would have all been around like, what did you do, where were you going? We're trying to find Maddie, right? It would only be later on when they would start really looking at, wanting to kind of look in the children and stuff like that. But I remember the Portuguese policeman was moved by this point, because they were really starting to hone in on the fact that there was no abduction. Within a month, he was moved after a month. And then the media went to town discrediting the Portuguese police, saying it was all bullshit. They tried to discredit the cadaver dogs, which was British, and it solved lots of British cases, right? So where you've got to be really fucking careful if you're starting to say, well, it doesn't know what it's doing in Portugal. Maybe the heat got to the cadaver dog. Like maybe it was just a bit too hot. It didn't really know what it was doing in Portugal compared to like over in the UK. But there's either neglect or sexual abuse. Either of those two things. Okay, so now we're going to go through like clear bits of evidence. I just wanted to give you the percentages because I was just very excited once they rolled around, because I genuinely thought Grok was going to go, okay, well, you can have like 52%, like, because he does that all the time. Okay, so here we go. There's 5 different key things we're going to go through. We've got the oh, hold on, sorry, it's just cut off some of the bits. Okay, we've got the overall synthesis, so a multi-angled integrated picture, we've then got the timeline and witness angle. Then we've got institutional and media angle. So these are the feed into the hypothesis, the sexual abuse motivation nuance, and then obviously Bruckner as the suspect, right? So those are the kind of the key bits. So the multi-angle is like hypothesis one. So these are kind of like the evidence for each of the hypotheses. Hypotheses. There we go. Okay, so the evidence converges most strongly on an internal May the 2nd night incident. So sedation-related accident with parental cover-up, and May 3rd staging as abduction. And they did it very poorly, right? They did it very poorly, which is why the police were able to rule out abduction very quickly, because there was no evidence of an abduction, right? So if I was going to stage an abduction, I would at least, you know, steal some. I would go out, like if I got 24 hours, I would go and steal some shoes. I would, some shoes or boots, right? I would make one of the boys, I would make them wear those boots, and then make sure there was like clear like foot imprinting. I would make sure that there is like scratches on the you know, panes of glass, like something, scratches. And maybe I would also steal a coat. Like I could go and pay for those things, swap my stuff with a homeless person's, right? And then I can climb through, and then there's fibrous evidence. Like I've watched enough, most people have watched enough crime shows to kind of like get some kind of evidence. I mean, you would have like, you would even put gloves on, right? Because and then you would have like glove fibers. There was no evidence, like as in like the apartment was pretty much spotless. So I have never seen a crime show. Okay, so for context, I did criminology and psychology undergrad, but also for decades I was watching lots of like true crime and really investigating serial killers. You know, I'm really interested in forensic analysis and all of that stuff. And I did, you know, that was a potential path of career that I was very seriously exploring. I have never seen an abduction reported on the telly or in any kind of like ever where they're coming in the cleanup, right? And they don't leave any trace evidence at all, right? There's even going like decades and decades ago, the case that always sticks to me about ears, you know, because they talk about like Epstein's ears, was the fact that one person who I'm pretty sure they were a burglar, they were convicted on the ear print, right? That was the only piece of evidence, was an ear print, but only piece of forensic evidence that tied the suspect to the crime. But there was other kind of like evidence of break-ins and stuff like that, right? So there was evidence of a crime, and then there was forensic evidence which linked the suspect to the crime. In the Maddie apartment 5A, there was no evidence of an abduction other than a child was missing. And the place was really fucking clean. And if you got kids and like young kids and you're out all day and you're on holiday and you're drinking and you're relaxing, like I don't know anybody who doesn't have like random toys strewn and like, you know, just place, like it was a very tidy and controlled scene. So McCann profiles show, so linguistic and behavioral angle. McCann profiles show controlled narrative, past tense usage about Madeleine. So we went through the scans, but just to remind, Kate McCann interviews, she was incredibly beautiful baby, actually, right? So Hyatt notes this is strong indicator when describing a missing child's ongoing characteristics, beauty, personality, present tense is expected. She is beautiful. not she was beautiful. Using past tense signals, the speaker believes the child is dead. Straight up. Not coming back. Another common pattern Hyatt highlighted was repeated references to Madeleine in the past tense without shifting back to present tense when talking about her as a person, not just a specific past event. Distancing language, so the situation, right? Both McCanns frequently referred to the disappearance as the situation. We were in or in similar. Hyatt flags this is narrative storytelling, language that creates psychological distance from this event, rather than personal ownership when Madeleine went missing. And this is this is multiple kind of statement analysis that Hyatt did as well. For us and Madeleine, this is what we flagged, right? Used early in appeals, Hyatt points out this groups the parents separately from the child as a Madeleine, creating subtle emotional distancing instead of our daughter. But also, like, the context of for us is they wanted the best possible outcome for us. Oh, and Madeleine, right? So bad, like just so bad. Like I literally, when I was copying and pasting the statement in, I was like, I literally put like, oh my God, like even I can like at a cursory glance can see that this is just fucking wrong as a statement. If you genuinely believe your child has been abducted. So premature composure and gratitude instead of panic, early joint statements and appeals within first few days, heavy emphasis on gratitude to the public, police and media, along with forward-looking campaign language. We will never give up, rather than raw desperation or repeated urgent pleas, focus on the child. So Hyatt noted the lack of expected excited utterance. So panic in the so Hyatt had the 999, not 999, but the Portugal version call interviews, and he when he analysed it, he compared it very much closely with the Jean-Benet Ramsey case in the terminology that saying we have a kidnapping rather than my child is missing. It could just like my child is gone, my child is missing, we need help. Like and remember the police, the local police were there in a couple of minutes. So had they done it then to like as a rational child, the sheer number of children being kidnapped is so low that in an emotional state, you're not going to instantly think my child's been kidnapped. My child's missing. Where is my child? Like my child's gone. Or you say like my child like gone. Maybe it's like somebody's taken her. Like that was not noted. Like somebody's taken her. Like where is she? Like and we need help. Like there was no kind of. It was just we have a kidnapping. Like who has a kidnapping, right? It was weird. But I didn't see all of it, so I couldn't run that through. But Hyatt states that the initial, the very first conversation is the most important, but we did the second too. So it was controlled, structured, appeals, and narrative building. Right. So then we have Kate talking about opening the door. And this is where Hyatt flags as trauma, stroke, sexual abuse sensitivity marker. So in the description of discovering Madeleine missing, she includes the unnecessarily detailed, I opened the door, and or different phrasing depending on the exact interview or transcript. Hyatt flags opening the door and turning on the light as classic sensitivity indicators in crime scene discovery statements, especially in cases involving sexual abuse or trauma. And again, he also parallels John Ramsey's statement in Jean-Benet Ramsey case, where he says, I opened the door, turned on the light, and there she was. Right? You would just be like, I went, I was looking for her and she was dead, right? You like, you don't kind of walk through it. So the reason why he says opening the door is an indicator of sexual abuse specifically. and early childhood sexual abuse. And it could be that Kate was on the receiving end of it. And when you look at like victims, I mean, she was raised a Catholic, but when you look at victims who have not processed their own trauma and abuse, they will then be drawn to like other individuals who are perhaps, it's very unfortunate in relationship-based circles, right? So the reason why Hyatt says that opening the door is a real kind of like indicator is because if you're a young child in bed, what happens is the door opens and then the trauma starts. So if you think about conditioning, like operational and classical conditioning, right? So you've got Pavlov's dogs. And by the way, there was no bell ringing ever. There wasn't a bell. That's just how it's like misconstrued. But basically the dogs started to salivate. It was a red light that used to come on, and the red light used to signal to the lab assistants it was time to feed the dogs. And so the red light would come on and they would start salivating because they associated the red light with the food coming. So it primed their digestive system, no longer smelling the food and digestion coming, right? So the red light came on and then that happens. And if you have dogs, right, specifically, if you kind of go up and down the stairs all day, but then you come downstairs and you've got your like, you come down with the intent to take them on a walk, they know. And so my dog, like I don't take my dogs consistently at the same time each day. I mean, I try to do them in the morning, but some days, you know, I kind of get up. If I'm not feeling too good, then I might go in the afternoon. So we don't have a very rigid routine. But I will be up and downstairs all day, and then all of a sudden I come down with the intent of taking them on a walk and they're ready. Right. So they know, they can tell from my energy and how I'm feeling like it's go time, right? So dogs are particularly good at that. But it was the red light that used to trigger the the glands, right? The digestive system. So the same thing, because it's a biological response, right? You got the red light trigger, biological response. The same thing happens in sexual abuse. The door opens. That's the trigger event for the biological response of fear. And if you are in a heightened fear state, all of the experiences you experience are going to be more vivid. You're going to remember them more. Right. So, and this is why you have to be very careful in cases of sustained abuse that you don't move too quickly, because then you could get flooding. And this and more cautionary is like going away for a like 48 hour meditative retreat. Literally, if you had repressed everything, you just like flood and you end up in a catatonic state, right? Meditation is so fucking dangerous, like if you don't have other tools to deal with trauma, because you might have repressed it, depending on your age. Depends on whether you've already had like leakage. If you're like mid-30s, you've probably already had leakage indicators. But if you're like 20, 21, you might still be in like kind of blackout mode about a lot of the stuff that, I mean, your behaviors and the way you're showing up, and probably like drinking, drugs, and all of those things, natural progression for unrepressed trauma. So you won't. But if you go away, like you're trying to get clean, you've got a meditative retreat, flooding. But so anxiety isn't a psychological response. It's a biological, physiological response to threat. And the door is the threat. So the fact that Kate is talking about, I opened the door, that's leakage, unnecessary information. Like, I went to check on her and she wasn't there. Like, that's what you're expecting. Not, I opened the door, I turned on the light and she wasn't there. Right? We didn't need to know that bit. Like, just I went and looked and she wasn't there. Like, that's it. You're going to get to the point as fast as possible because you're freaking out. it's padding. So it says here, in high stress emotional discovery of missing deceased child, people typically focus on the child, are sure she was gone or she wasn't there, like I just said. And this is, I got Grok to summarize it, and I hadn't read that bit, by the way. It's just true. Mentioning the door and the light is unnecessary detail that often signals psychological distancing or trauma associated with what was seen behind the door. So it could be Kate's trauma. It could be because of what's going on with Maddie and the two other kids. In sexual abuse explorations, Hyatt notes that doors and lights frequently appear in language where there's prior sexual trauma or when the discovery involves something sexualized. Okay, so again, we don't know whether it's Kate's repressed trauma coming out. The door, because she's okay. So you have to remember, like, child died. That's traumatic. Trauma, and she's now, like, your brain does muddled stuff. So is it her trauma leaking through, or is it because it's going on, and that's what went through her head? Shit, like, if we call an ambulance, fuck. I don't think she died during some kind of awful sexual act, because I think that I personally believe, based on all the evidence that I've seen, is that they were way more absent from the room rather than, she's seen some kind of sexual, like she's not opened the door and seen, like, Maddie in some compromising position with Jerry and now she's dead, right? That doesn't fit the evidence of kind of what was going on. But Hyatt does say we need to explore it for sexual abuse. So why did the speaker need to tell us they opened the door? It can indicate the mind is replaying the moment of confronting something disturbing or unexpected, right? So trauma or sexual abuse. But trauma is finding your child dead, right? Or missing. Okay. So forensic and physical angle. So we've got the cadaver dog, blood, like, hits. There were 13 hits inside the apartment and, like, just outside, behind the sofa, parents' bedroom, patio bush, rental car boot, and the cuddle cat. So this is important. Somebody was saying, so this is where I disagree with the guy who has kind of got some good ideas about the timeline. He suggests that they put Maddie in lots of different plastic bags and put her outside the patio door. It put her in the bush, right? However, the policeman, and this makes more sense, says that they put her in the wardrobe, and there was, like, indicators both in the wardrobe and behind the bush. But I don't think they would have left her outside, right? It's the kid doesn't. If you think about like, you're not going to dump your child outside. So the patio bush could be, like, from something else, right? So from the passed on from the parents or something else. Like, I don't believe. And if you've wrapped a child in plastic, because he literally says they wrapped it in plastic bags and then stuck them outside. Well, then there's not going to be blood, right? There's not going to be blood outside. But there was indicators of blood inside the wardrobe. So the policeman, and do correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember, as he suggests, that they put her in the wardrobe and cleaned up, and then they moved her, right? But she was in the wardrobe while they kind of figured out what to do and cleaning up, and then they moved her. And obviously the rental car, which was, weeks later, but so she was moved twice, right? She was moved out of the apartment and then hidden for a few weeks and then moved and buried, like permanent burial. So the Cadaver and Blood dogs, Eddie and Keela, highly trained UK specialist dogs handled by Martin Grime, alerted in multiple locations in August 2007. Behind the sofa in the living room, both dogs alerted strongly, Cadaver and Blood. Parents' bedroom near the wardrobe, right-hand corner, Cadaver scent. So dead body in the wardrobe. Patio area outside the bedroom, garden below the veranda was Cadaver scent again. Rental car hired 25 days later, driver's side door and boot, both Blood and Cadaver. Cuddle cat, Madeleine's favourite pink soft toy that Kate carried publicly. Eddie alerted to it. Right? So that makes sense for a grieving mum to not be departed from the child's favourite toy and not wash it because it probably smelled of her. I mean, grieving and missing, I guess. But the fact that the Cadaver dog was just like, this cat smells like death, love. So 13 around the apartment, clothing, and car. Martin Grime's professional opinion, the alerts were consistent with the scent of human cadaver that had been present and then moved. And these are the official findings from the Portuguese police files and Grimes's reports, right? That's not like secondhand. That's literally came in, did his job. That's what he found. The apartment was thoroughly cleaned. Hair strands were removed. This is where things start to get a bit fucking dodgy. So the apartment was thoroughly cleaned shortly after the disappearance. So the apartment was unusually clean for a holiday rental with 3 young children, like I said, right? Forensic teams found very few hairs belonging to Madeleine in the apartment. Notably, Jerry McCann flew back to the UK specifically to retrieve a hairbrush and pillowcase from the family home in Rotherley, items that would contain Madeleine's DNA and hair. This happened after the Portuguese police had already searched the apartment, and the cleaning was so thorough that the specialist dogs had difficulty finding stronger scent sources in some areas, right? I want you to just think about the logistical time that it takes to clean an apartment so thoroughly. Specialist Cadaver and Blood dogs struggled to find scents, right? That would indicate, and meaning there was blood there, right? Which means bleach, which means it means thorough, severe cleaning, but also enough time to have passed that the smell of the chemicals that were used to clean were no longer present. Because if you've ever used bleach, or you've ever used strong chemical cleaners, or you've ever, like if you walk into a house, that you smell it, right? You can smell it. So they did industrial level cleaning. It quite rightly, like Jerry says, how could they have done the industrial level cleaning that was required in 90 minutes? They couldn't have. But the industrial level cleaning happened. So did they just decide they were going to do it that day randomly? And then Maddie was randomly abducted. But they cleaned up after she was abducted because there were blood, right? So the blood would have been useful to prove the abduction. Would have been useful to prove the abduction, but they'd cleaned it away. So why would you think your child is missing and then you clean everything? If you've got nothing to do with it. This was 2007. This wasn't like 1907. Right? This is like, CSI had been around, like everybody, and these are medical professionals. who would deal with blood analysis, would deal with like sample analysis. They would know that in order to, you know, like if you are sending bloods, you wouldn't contaminate them with cleaning fluids, right? Because if you didn't know what was going on and you saw blood in an apartment and your child was missing, you're not going to automatically assume it's your child's. You'd be like, that could be the killer's, right? And I know that could be DNA evidence, right? You're not going to clean it, right? So we're just looking at this logically, right? You're not going to clean up. If you think your child's been abducted, you are not going to cover up for the abductee by spotlessly cleaning the apartment. You also can't do it in 90 minutes. So there's no way that she died that day, right? You neither of those. So why did Jerry fly back? Why was it so important that they eradicated all the DNA evidence and hair? Well, because hair follicles, if you're like doing like drug testing, like you can tell from the follicles that. So again, this points to sedation, right? Maybe they don't do it at home, but it's something that they just routinely do while they're on holiday, right? This is just the thing that they do on holiday. Or maybe they do it at home, but they just haven't done it in a while, that it was okay, right? Why would they need to get a pillowcase all the way from home? Was Maddie not asleep in the apartment? If she'd been drugged. Okay, so the theory, and this is what Pat Brown, apologize, let me just get her name. Pat Brown. And this is it's her theory, I believe, and then other people have picked up on it, is that she was drugged, but she woke up, she like fell and hit her head. So yes, potentially blood. There was evidence of blood in the apartment. So the most logical explanation is that it's Maddie's, which is why it was cleaned away. Because if it was anybody else's, and it was in the area, it was in the same area where the cadaver dog. I mean, it could be that somebody cut their finger and it's just coincidental, right? But why are you cleaning the apartment? Right, that's the question everybody should be asking them at any interview. But why did you clean the apartment? That's my first fucking question. Why did you clean up? If you think your child was abducted, why did you clean up? Why did you destroy forensic evidence that would have allowed the police to capture them? Even if it was delayed, right? Even if it was 6 years later, that's the proof, the evidence that would enable them to, like, you to get justice. But yeah. So the blood evidence, the theory is that she fell and she, you know, banged her head. And then they came back and she was either completely dead or would require extreme intervention from medical services. And they couldn't let that happen because then questions would be asked. So, I mean, that's a darker theory, right? And we don't know which one that is. But to then allow your child to die. I mean, they could have done it. They could have, like, helped her on. They could have, you know, they had access to medications. They could have eased her passing, right? Like, any of those are, like, fucking... and, you know, that's a reason, you know, for, you know, perhaps Kate to be like AWOL, like for 2 days at the height of her child, like hunting for her child. I don't know whether she was AWOL completely. She was AWOL from the media, right? Not making any statements. Knowing that you sedated your child, you weren't there for them falling over, and then passing is one level of like trauma you're going through. But to then be like, I don't know, like she wasn't completely dead, and deciding not to intervene, right? That's fucking a whole other level of psychologically disturbed. And that's not me saying, you know, you will be psychologically disturbed from that, like, for life, right? Yeah, for sure. Okay, but so there should be clothes in the apartment. Toothbrush could be used for DNA. Like, or are they not brushing the child's teeth? I think it just, like, that's what you usually use, right? If you were like, you've seen it on the shows, right, where somebody thinks that they're you know, they're trying to figure out whether their dad's the dad, and they like swipe the toothbrush. And so there was stuff in the apartment for DNA evidence if they found the body. What a really surreal thing to be thinking about, right? If you believe your child's alive, but you then provide stuff for if she's dead, right? That's and you fly all the way home to do that. My personal belief on flying all the way home is because the Portuguese police were looking at both of them really fucking strongly, and they were terrified about what they'd find back home. So he went home not to get, I mean, he came back with those things, right? But the reason he went home was to destroy evidence at home, is my personal belief. It doesn't make sense. He also remain like, so the mum and the twins stayed in Portugal, right? So he so if you think, and bearing in mind the image of Maddie was everywhere, like, if anybody, if you put Maddie's face on any newspaper, you wouldn't even need to have her name by it. Like, everybody would have known, because you wouldn't need DNA evidence unless you believe, okay, this is something else a bit telling, unless you believe that the body is so disfigured they're unrecognizable. Like, why would you need DNA evidence? Because you would be able to see, right? It's not going to be not going to be completely decomposed, right? By this point, there's no reason to go and get DNA. That's, and this is something that people have picked up on a lot. It just doesn't make fucking sense. And why would you be saying if she's found, if you keep telling everybody you know she's going to be found? You have hope, but when she's found, right? And so that indicates that they know the only way they will be able to tell the body is Maddie is if through DNA, which is fucking disturbing if you ask me. 100% disturbing. So the Portuguese police had already taken DNA samples from the apartment and the family. The timing was odd. Why leave his wife and twins during the most critical early phase of the investigation? Critics argue allow it opportunity, remove a control potential evidence. So hairs, fibers, and DNA from the family home. Yep, that contradicts the official story. So the apartment was already being forensically examined, yet he prioritized this random trip. And this is what Carlo Amaral, Pat Brown, and Bernd Stellander say is unusual for parents who are worried about their children. Okay, so I was like, yeah, it's fucking dodgy. So timing. So Grok says hiding evidence at home makes the most sense because timing. Portuguese police had already named the McCanns as Ogridos, so they were formal suspects by mid-September, and early May they were under significant scrutiny. The McCanns knew the apartment was being forensically examined. It controlled what DNA, and so this is what they went home because they were shitting themselves about what was about to come out. Remember his first statement, he states, the best outcome for us and for Maddie, right? His best outcome is not figuring out what the fuck happened at home. So a hairbrush contains Maddie's hair with root DNA minus anything sedative. A pillowcase from her bed would contain biological material, saliva, skin cells. If there was any prior injury, medication residue, or unusual substances on those items, retrieving them personally gives opportunities to dispose or replace them. So Jerry went while Kate stayed in Portugal with the twins. This created a window where it could deal with potential evidence at the family home without immediate oversight. Contextual fit. The apartment, it had already been unusually cleaned. Dog alerts later appeared in the rental car 25 days after the disappearance. Critics argue the official "we need reference sample" explanation is weak. Portuguese police already had them, just didn't need it. So the counter arguments, the McCanns and their supporters say it was a legitimate request from investigators to build a full DNA profile for comparison if a body or clothing was found elsewhere. They claim it was done openly and with police knowledge. I bet the police did fucking know, and they were like, this is dodgy as fuck, right? And just for context, the Portuguese police have never ruled out the McCanns as suspects. So our media says that they were cleared. They've never been cleared. They were never ruled out. They were told they were no longer allowed to investigate them. That came from on high, that came from their prime minister, right? Or PM, right? It came from our PM to theirs, to the police. The same as our Met police, you can't investigate the McCanns. Because it would implicate, so national security, right? That would be it came from the PM backing them, like it just, the questions would be asked, what did Brown know and when did he know it? Is he compromised? Right? The same thing, questions that are going on with Mandelson and Andrew at the moment, right? Is he compromised? Is the brother compromised? And if there is sexual abuse, what did they know? When did they know it? And they actively covered it up, right? You can't look at the McCanns, and we all know, you know, you can look into the Belgian paedophile rings, like they all fucking work together, right? And frequently, and if you watch John Wedger, he did an interview with Johnny English. John Wedger is talking about, doctors or doctors, solicitors, teachers, they're all involved, right? It's like doctors, it's not unusual. Unfortunately, it's not unusual for doctors to be involved in abusing children. And there was a pediatrician sentenced in the last few weeks for abusing children, right? So it's not unusual. Look at what happened at Stoke Mandeville when Jimmy Savile, they all knew it was going on and they covered it up for money, right? Those are medical professionals. So because they're doctors, people have this perception, but actually dodgy as fuck a lot of the time. Okay, so analytical assessment. So this trip is one of the more high suspicion behaviors in the time. It fits neatly into an internal cover-up scenario, especially if there was prior sedation medication in the home that left traces. Madeleine had any unexplained injuries or bruising from an earlier incident. The parents wanted to ensure the official DNA sample was clean and controlled. Yep. It also becomes much harder to explain under a pure stranger abduction theory. Why risk leaving your remaining children and wife during the most critical phase to personally collect items that police could have handled through normal channels? So the hairbrush pillowcase trip is consistent with damage limitation and evidence management rather than panicked parental behavior. It strengthens the internal accident and cover-up hypothesis and adds weight to the idea the McCanns were actively managing the forensic narrative from very early on. Okay, so there is no intruder evidence, right? So the window sill louvres were undisturbed. The exterior metal shutters on Madeleine's window door showed no signs of forced entry, no damage, and no tampering. The window sill, including lichen and dust, was completely undisturbed, right? No footprints, handprints, scuff marks, or signs anybody had climbed in or out. Only fingerprints that were found were Kate McCann's. Portuguese police forensics experts confirmed the shutters could not be easily opened from the outside without leaving clear signs. This directly contradicts the early McCann claim that an intruder had entered through the bedroom window. Kate initially described the window and shutters as wide open with curtains blowing. This is the strongest piece of physical evidence against the abduction theory, highlighted by Goncalo, Amaral, and Pat Brown. An intruder would almost certainly have left marks in the sill or forced the shutters in some visible way. Just makes sense, right? They did hire a PR guy. The PR guy also happened to be part of the Foreign Office at the time, also happened to be ex-BBC. Also happened to say, so he did an interview 18 months or so after the missingness of Maddie. And so we did a BBC interview getting ahead of the fact that Kate was refusing to answer these 48 questions posed by the Portuguese police. All 48 questions had never been asked before. And he says in the interview, like, she was just, her lawyer had told her to stop talking because she was saying the same things over and over and again. But actually those 48 questions were brand new, right? So the net was closing in. So he does this interview on camera on the BBC, and then ex-BBC, sorry, so he's an ex-BBC member. So other BBC members at the time then say to him, what do you think? And he offhandedly says, they're weird, they know something, I think they're involved, right? So the PR guy kind of says to other people, I mean, but this is speculation, and this came from the interview with the foreign detective we've got his name again, with Johnny English. So I mean, I don't know how true that is because I haven't seen that evidence, I haven't spoken to any of those, but that is there. But he, you know, he's done very well from it, and now he's got skin in the game. But, you know, if you were, you know, if you commit murder, you absolutely want that guy ahead of you. But yeah, again, but they're also very litigious, right? They sue like crazy. They never sued Peter Hyatt while he was alive. And they haven't sued. They did sue Pat Brown. They did sue Amaral. But they haven't sued this other guy, the foreign detective guy whose book came out maybe like 12 months ago now, talking about the altered timeline. Because if they sue for defamation and they go to court, right? If they sue and alert people to actual evidence of the altered timeline, but also in his book, he suggests where she's buried is on the hill, right? So temporarily buried at the church, which would make sense because they're Catholic upbringing. You know, they would want her to be buried on consecrated ground before like the final resting place, right? And there's witnesses that saw, you know, a tall man 2 to 3 weeks later going past the church with a big heavy bag, right? And everyone's like, oh well, but like where did they hide the body? And this is why people are like, they hid it in the car, they hid it in the wardrobe for that many days. Well, pretend like most logically they buried it in the church, which was like just over the road. Buried her in the church, sorry, rather than it. I buried her in the church. consecrated ground. Then they had ceremonies, they had all of those things, they had everybody praying. Like, so the second statement is outside of a church event. Please pray for Maddie, right? Okay, so that they would have been like inches away from where she was buried to have this conversation 2 days, 3 days after it happened. And then buried on the hill. And I haven't read his book, right? I only kind of found his interview earlier today, so that was kind of like the icing on the cake for the time. I was hunting for timeline evidence since Hyatt's interview in doing the 2011 thing. So I've never looked into where it was buried, but supposedly that cross references with lots of other potential highlighted areas. And funnily enough, the German police are going everywhere except there, right? That makes sense, but they're going everywhere except. Okay, so this is the... There's a witness. I put that in the wrong place. Okay, so now we're going to go into timeline and witness angle. Let's do this one first. Okay, I'm just trying to put it in order because I put that in the wrong place. I want to do the nanny last. And the pool photo, the nanny last. Okay, so first up, these are kind of like timeline anomalies. So Kate reports that so this is Kate suggesting evidence of Maddie being alive on the morning of May the 3rd. So what you have to ask, right? Why would you need to make something up for the morning of May the 3rd if she was alive, right? So how do we know made something up? So Kate had reported consistently that Maddie wasn't really, like, she was a happy child. She didn't really cry, right? She didn't, right? So to say, I was crying, the twins were crying, where were you, right? So what? Oh yeah, here we go. So while having breakfast on May the 3rd, so she supposedly was alive May the 3rd and like disappeared the evening. Mummy, why didn't you come when Sean and I were crying last night? Kate confirmed this in interviews in her book. She described it as saying that Madeleine did it very casually, right? So what this tells me is that Maddie was potentially crying. Sean was crying. She potentially was still alive. This is why I'm saying, like, gets really... Because why would Kate have that why would you bring that up, right? So this is like leakage. Why would you say that specifically if you've already said she wasn't a crier, right? So the twins were crying. I was crying. The twins were crying. Why would the twins be crying? Why would Maddie be crying when they're sedated? Right? They wouldn't have... either they were sedated and they wouldn't have been crying, or they were sedated. Maddie wasn't fully sedated, which is where she fell, and she was crying. But why would Kate bring it up unless she witnessed them crying? That's what I'm trying to get at, but not very eloquently. Because if you were talking about your child's mourning and they were there, you would be really vivid on the details, right? You would know, right? But that's not something that would stand out for you. That random statement, like, that's not something that, like, you would not have to build cover for the night before, which is what this is doing. And it's also suggesting something very traumatic happened the night before, which had Maddie and the twins crying. So yeah, it directly suggests the children were awake and crying on the night of May the 2nd while the parents were out dining, right? So either the children were crying when the parents weren't there, but also the McCanns also say they sleep soundly, which is why they leave them. Every time they check on them, they're asleep. The children don't wake up. It's fine because they go to bed, they're asleep, they're young children. I mean, young children do, right? They do. They usually sleep all the way through. Sometimes they'll have a nightmare and they'll wake up. I mean, just generally, children will. So it's just that specific phrasing is dodgy. So it supports the idea that May the 2nd was not a normal, peaceful in the evening. Something distressing happened that caused the children to cry for their parents. Like, what happened? And then Kate randomly said, I made a mental note to check the children more often that evening, yet they still went out again, right? So if they were doing that to plant that the impulsive, opportunistic person tried to get in the night before, woke the children up, the children were crying and the parents weren't there, then why would you go out? Why wouldn't you report that to the police? Why wouldn't you ask your child, but what made you cry? Like, what made you cry? Like, why were you crying? Do you remember what happened when you woke up? Like, what was going on? Right? That would be the more vivid thing, right? And then you'd be alerting the police because there was a noise outside. You would investigate, maybe say, oh, it was just a bird, or you would mention that in the kind of narrative framing about the abductor, right? And you would say, like, the reason why I know that you think they've been abducted is the kids had woken up the night before, they were crying, we looked and then there were scratches. Like, there would be a legitimate reason, there would be evidence, right? So there's no evidence. So why were the children awake and crying? Because something traumatic happened. And that's real, that happened, and Kate witnessed it. Because children of 3 don't usually wake up in the morning and then go, why weren't you there last night? They are waking up, they're hungry, they're talking about fucking mermaids in the toilet when they went, like, not constructive sentences. Mummy, why didn't you come when Sean and I were crying last night? That's a very structured sentence for a 3-year-old. Let's just see what Grok says about that sentence. Is this a 3-year-old's language? I don't think it fucking is. Based on what I know about 3-year-old children, and child development and child's language comprehension and structures. Here we go. This is advanced language for a 3-year-old. Most 3-year-olds speak in 3 to 5 word sentences. They use pronouns, I, we, me, and ask simple why questions. They can talk about recent events, but usually with a simpler structure. Longer, grammatically complex sentences with multiple ideas are more common in 4 to 5-year-olds. So the quote in question, Mummy, why didn't you come when Sean and I were crying last night? Many bright, verbally advanced 3-year-olds, especially firstborn children, can produce sentences like this. I and we, past tense, why, all within normal range for a child close to 4. However, it's a relatively long and complex sentence, 12 words with embedded clauses. When Sean and I were crying last night. I don't know any child that says Sean and I. As an adult, I don't use Matt and I, right? I use me and Matt, which is grammatically incorrect, but it's normal language, right? So this is a child that is unlikely to say Sean and I. The adults, absolutely. And if she's saying it as it's implanted in her mind, she will know that Maddie wouldn't have said that. The structure, here we go. Structure is quite adult-like and grammatically precise. A more typical version from the 3-year-old. Mummy, why you no come? We crying last night. Or Mummy, Sean and me cry, you no come. Or even, Mummy, why you not there? Where were you? I was crying. And I would say, actually, age 3, children are still very self-centered and narcissistic, and she wouldn't have actually been that bothered about the twins. Right, I was crying. Where were you? And then Mummy would go, and with the twins were crying as well. Right? Try. They blame the other two for stuff, but children are still in that, like they haven't developed empathy. They're only just starting to kind of get theory of mind starts to come, but it's not in their periphery, right? That is a fully formed adult structured sentence. But also, if she thinks the children were crying, why did you go out? Or maybe they were crying the night before, and so they upped the sedative dose, and that's what caused the complications. Maybe they're merging the 2 nights. That's what can happen, right? Who knows? So this small but powerful detail coming from Madeleine herself is one of the strongest pieces of evidence pointing to an incident occurring the night before the official abduction alarm, right? If Madeleine really said it. But actually, the mum reporting Madeleine saying it is indicative of something happening that night where the children were crying. Night before witness, man. Okay, so there was a witness witnessed a man leaving 5A between 1:45 and 1:50 carrying a heavy black sack with both arms, and so the statement says both arms and both hands, right? Which was too heavy for rubbish. And again, this comes from the Johnny English with the foreign detective. Oh my gosh, what's his fucking name? I'm gonna get his name because that's just really, really rude of me. Maybe I'll stick his name on the fuck now. Oh, jeepers creepers. I'm so sorry to this poor guy, but I did literally only find him today, so I can't find it now. What's his name? Oh, here we go. Bernd Stellander. Right. This is his information. This is his evidence. So let's stick him on the wall. Maybe I'll remember. Just put foreign detective. The reason why I call him that is because I'm pretty sure that's what he's got as his like the kind of name as well, like the foreign detective. So that stuck in my mind because that the guy's name is too difficult for me to remember. Sorry. Okay, but this is his evidence. We must reference him. It's not fair. He's 7 years worth of work, right? So credit where credit is due. And I'm not here to be ripping people off or pretending like I didn't do this investigation. I've done my own, kind of, but this is his work. So he investigated first the placement, and then he discovered by analyzing like Maddie's books and statements that actually the timeline was off. And so then he started investigating the timeline, and he released his book. And after doing a podcast with Johnny English, talking about the timeline, a private detective got in touch with him and said, "It's funny you say this because I interviewed a witness who said," so this is where this came from. And the private detective is ex Scotland Yard. So ex, like English police. So, and that's an important distinction, because the media keep going, the Portugal police are shit, our police are great, right? So this private detective was English police, right? Bearing in mind the Met like had 800 people suspended for sexual offences against women and children, doesn't say very much. And the vast majority of those were in the armed response team, right? So doesn't say very much for our police force, to be fair. Anyway, which breaks my heart because my granddad was a policeman. Anyway, so this is where this evidence comes from. So the night before, the witness is a man leaving 5A carrying a heavy black bag or sack with both arms, and then she says later both hands. Now this is important, because now I'm going to say what foreign detective is saying in that interview is incorrect, right? He kept saying, and the reconstruction had the bag like lopped over the shoulder like a Santa sack, but that's not what the witness says. The witness says in carrying with both arms and both hands, which actually indicates carrying like that, like cradling and holding, right? So that's important, because if it's your child, so if you think about a child who's passed away, you are going to cradle the child, right? You're going to carry it lovingly. You are still protective. You're not going to throw it in a bin bag and lob it over your shoulder, no matter how kind of like go mode you are with trying to cover up. That's not it, right? So the reconstruction that he did a reconstruction with black bags, and this is why I don't agree. So there's a missing tennis bag, right? And in the tennis bag, the pervy guy, we'll get to the pervy guy at the top of 7, says, it's somewhere where you can hide your tennis racket. Like nobody hides the tennis racket, right? So they obviously clearly hid Maddie in the tennis bag, and he was holding it with both arms. So that doesn't mean there wasn't rubbish bags and rubbish and evidence like lobbed out of the apartment, because the cadaver dogs did flag it up. But I don't know any grieving family who's going to launch a child out the window or leave a child out the window. Putting it in the bedroom cupboard is, in a warped way, a humane thing to do while you're cleaning things up, while you're figuring out how to dispose of the body. And he in one of the interviews, they say starts to say dispose, so again, this comes back to, was she alive? Was she disposed of? Like they go to use, Jerry goes to use the word dispose, right? But it should be bury is so like that leads to very concerning, for me, indicators. But he doesn't say it all the way, he catches himself, right? But so the witness clearly says both arms and both hands, which means they did not throw this child over the shoulder, which means, again, it's very unlikely to be somebody who's been abducted a child. Why are you going to abduct a child, throw it in a bin bag and lob it over your shoulder? What are you doing with that? Right? If you've opportunistically gone to sexually abuse a child and it's died, like, you don't give a shit. You fucking leave it, right? Because you've got no emotional attachment to it at all. Like, you got what you got out of it, fuck it, right? Like, legit. Whereas if you are cradling it, that's love, that's attachment, that indicates to me the person that she saw was definitely Jerry, without even the rest of her statement. Like, just that indicates she saw a man, a tall man. That's somebody who loved that child. Now, they were heading to the car park, which is interesting. out the front, heading to the car park. She specifically noted it was too heavy for normal rubbish. The man walked towards the car park. The apartment's windows and shutters were open at that cold hour. She found really unusual. So this is the night before, right? This is the night before. The windows were all open. And why would you have the windows open in the middle of the night? When Jerry and Kate were at home now, right? Because they're no longer out. They're at home with all the windows and shutters open. Really unusual. Doesn't make sense at all. So the witness was reluctant and fearful when giving a statement, only speaking to a private investigator, got very agitated when the private investigator said, I'll pass this on to police. The witness also said things in her statement. I've seen him before, with the children in the pool on Sunday. And with his 3 children. So indicative that she had clearly matched the man that she saw with Jerry, who she'd seen around. So the witness was actually somebody who worked there. There's reports of the McCanns harassing workers from the hotel and actually trying to chase down this one person that they thought was potentially this witness, and it all kind of fizzled out because the person they thought was this witness was actually off for 3 days. Right. So, so much so, this is such an important piece of information that Jerry and Kate tried to get in front of it, dismissing it as ludicrous. Right. Because it wouldn't be something that it just wouldn't be something that stick out in your mind. You just be like, they're just fucking nuts. You wouldn't even mention it because your focus is on your missing child, right? Not nutters who are just making shit up. Okay, so now her referencing the 3 children in the pool is really important because this also links into the last photo that is used to say that the timeline was that Wednesday morning. Thursday morning, the 3rd. So the official story is Kate took the photo at 2:29 on May the 3rd. It showed Madeleine sitting in the pool with Jerry and Amelie. The camera displayed 1:29 because it was allegedly set 1 hour behind. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? So researchers, including Bert Stellander, point to weather reports, shadows, clothing, and lighting that don't fully match the afternoon of May the 3rd. Some analysis suggests the photo was actually taken earlier in the week, so possibly the 29th or the 30th, so the Sunday when the witness perhaps who saw them and later presented as proof that Madeleine was alive on the 3rd. The photo was not released immediately. It came retrospectively. And remember what Grok said previously, or what the statement analyst thing says, if you find evidence after the fact, we always have to be really suspect of it. Because if it was evidence that could prove innocent or guilt, it would be presented at the time. Right? Then digital camera. So you just fucking hand over your digital camera. Like, she was alive this morning. Like, we took a photo of her this morning. Digital camera, take it all. Right? They didn't. It was released 3 weeks after the disappearance, around the 24th of May. Bearing in mind the 25th of May is when the cadaver dog found blood. The dogs found blood and evidence of blood and death in the car, right? So they're building their narrative. Questions about the XIF metadata, so digital file information, and whether it was altered. So this is important because this is the main piece of evidence the McCanns and their supporters used to prove Maddie was alive and well on afternoon of May the 3rd. If the photo was taken earlier, it removes the strongest proof that she was still alive on the day that she vanished, which strengthens the May the 2nd timeline. So with the timestamp, it being the hour different, It's because they probably forgot Portugal. So when they were resetting, like, they just obviously changed it for, like, English time, right? Forgetting Portugal's an hour ahead. That's what you would be like, "Shit, we need to change this. What time did it happen?" But the camera's English, right? English time. 'Cause you wouldn't, I'm pretty sure yeah. 'Cause they've done it after the fact. Because actually, like, if most people's digital cameras just say, like, the, like, 0000. They say the date of the installation, right? The batteries come out, like, 'cause you have to reset. Like, if you've got a digital camera, right? So this is back then. If you have a digital camera, you have to keep, because these piss me off. You have to keep resetting the day and time correct. Every time the battery comes out, you put it back in again, or you charge it. So if they were meticulously putting the day and time, you would set it for Portugal time, right? What's the time now? Portugal time. But he went home in May, so this was still, I don't know whether he went home twice. He went home in May when the shit was really hitting the fan for them, whereas this was presented late September. So perhaps my personal is they did it while in Portugal. But they just forgot that it's like it's English time, right? I don't know. There's some like whatever happened. They edited it, but maybe they edited it on their computer. Like, I mean, if you edit it on your computer, is that in English time? Something was in English time, which is why they were thinking in Portugal time, I need to change it. But something happened. I don't know. I don't know why they did it or how they did it. But what doesn't make sense is the fact that it's, I mean, for my personally, what doesn't make sense is actually got date and time on it in the first place, right? But also why they didn't just hand the camera over there and then, because you would. If you had taken photos maybe 12 hours earlier, less than the afternoon, right? So she went missing supposedly not between 9 and 10 in the evening, 6 hours earlier. Like, again, you wouldn't clean the apartment, but you would just you'd hand it over, because you'd be like, I want a photo. Like, this is the most recent photo of her, but there's also lots of other photos from the last week, right? Why would you hand pick the photo you hand picked that's not from the holiday? You want the clothes she's wearing, the haircut she's got now. Like, you're not going to bring it out 3 days later? And so that begs the question, where are the photos from the 3rd if she was alive? And also, why didn't they use a photo from the day before? So what was going on the day before? Like, why did they have to go back? Why did they have to go back to the Sunday in order to find a photo? Which I think is also, questions to be asked. But 100%, because I first thought, shit, is that what he did when he went home? But the times are different. So he went home to get DNA evidence in May, because for when they find the body. Yeah, it's weird. But days, times, like the weather patterns, like all of it, it's not from that day. But they've edited it, and they've edited it wrong. So then this is all about the timeline. Then we've got, I want to do the nanny last. There was another bit. What have I done? I've done the photo. Oh yeah, crying bag photo. Okay, so now we're doing the nanny. right? And I personally think this is the smoking gun. And this took an hour, right? And I say it took an hour. It took an hour of me trying to get Grok to understand what I meant. Because again, the point of this is Grok to push back and disprove all of the Katie flashes. Me going, yeah, but what about this? Prove it. But evidence is not the same disproving. His job is to disprove what I'm saying. So the nanny initially said Maddie and 4 or 5 other children are missing. So why this? And this is just like a random. This is like a random statement that everybody pulls out, right? Oh, the nanny saying 4 or 5 children are missing. And then she changes her statement later on to say that Maddie was crying on the evening of the 2nd, right? The evening in question, after spending time with the McCanns. She changes her mind. The foreign detective says that she's probably covered up later on because, it's her job, stuff like that. But all of that's irrelevant, because what we want to do is we want to pay attention to what they actually said. And so what we have to bear in mind, right? And this is why I don't understand why people aren't examining this statement more. So the nanny is somebody who was very closely linked into the Tapper 7. Shit, I just realized the time. So very closely linked into the Tapper 7. So she would have known that I believe this statement proves she knew they were sedating the children. I believe this statement means that she had noticed Maddie and the other children were missing that day. She had noticed the fear and the panic around Maddie and automatically assumed it was all the children, right? Because if you look at the statement that Jerry and Kate say happened, right? Kate went back and looked, and then she says to Jerry, Maddie's gone, right? No mention of the other children. What they say is every 90 minutes, somebody goes back and checks and everybody's fine, and they check all the children. Like one parent goes and checks all the children, which means if Kate had gone and checked on all the children and she only comes back and Maddie's missing, then none of the other parents are focused on the other children, just Maddie. They would know straight away the other children are fine because only Kate's only raised the question of Maddie, right? So what should have come from is a child is missing or Maddie's missing. There shouldn't have been any reference to the other 4 or 5 children. It doesn't make sense. And the reason why it doesn't make sense is because either the abductions happened and only Maddie's missing, and so everybody's hunting just for Maddie because the other children are fine, right? Nobody's mentioned the other children. Or for 24 hours, the children have been sedated and AWOL while they're cleaning everything up, and the nannies noticed their absence, right? They weren't there. But what the nannies thought straight away is something's happened and it's all the children because she's aware of sedation or whatever. So if you think, like, if you as part of the Tapper 7, so not even Jerry and Kate, right? If you've spent 24 hours knowing Maddie's dead and you're covering it up, in no way, shape or form are you going to accidentally blurt out somebody's taken the children, right? You're not going to blurt out any statements that indicate the rest of the children are at risk. And the reason why you wouldn't want to do that is because you wouldn't want eyes on you, right? For the same reason why they won't speak up, not just because of the fraud, but because eyes are on them, right? there would be no leakage from the Tapper 7 people or Jerry or Kate to suggest the other children were in any danger or any harm at all whatsoever. Which means this nanny has made the assumption based on the information that she knows prior, which indicates that she knew there's something dodgy going on with all of those children. So the fact that she mentions Maddie means she's hearing Maddie, but she's linking Maddie to the 4 or 5 other children. So what Grot kept saying is it suggests that the staff believed multiple children were unaccounted for, but they wouldn't believe that because the McCanns and the Tapper 7 would have just said Maddie, right? That's it. The focus was on Maddie from the beginning. So they say that, so the Tapper 7 repeatedly say that they were doing regular checks every 15 to 30 minutes on all the children, right? So if that was true, in the first few minutes after Kate raised the alarm, and this is what I was saying to Grok, the adults should have known very quickly that only Maddie was missing because they supposedly checked on the others, or Kate had checked on the others and they checked on them all at the same time. So either they didn't check, the checks weren't as regular as they said, which means, and it happened on the Wednesday night, everybody was fucking panicking about all the children because they hadn't actually checked on them and Kate had only just gone to check, and then all of a sudden Madeleine's missing. She's panicked. She's not then looked at the other children. You know, that's a theory. There was genuine confusion about how many children are unresponsive but unaccounted for. And then the group may have initially panicked because more than one child wasn't responding. And I had to keep saying, but those only work as theories as to why the nanny said it if it happened on Wednesday the 3rd. They don't hold true as reasons for the nanny thinking that if it happened on the Tuesday night. Because why would the group panicked? You spend 24 hours rehearsing and cleaning. The group were not panicked, and we know the group weren't panicked because of the cold, calculated, past tensed conversation that Jerry had, right? Or that they had with the police. There's been a kidnapping. Like that, what? That my child's been kidnapped. Well, not even my child's been kidnapped. There's been a kidnapping. So it could not have happened on the 3rd, right? It just couldn't. Which means there was no panic. There was no real panic about potential children and confusion. Everybody involved at the Tapper 7 would know it's only Maddie, which means there's no leakage, which means the nanny has put 2 and 2 together based on what she knows outside of it. And she was forced to revise her statement to say that she heard Maddie crying on the night of May the 2nd, right? Because she'd never mentioned it before. So again, you have to ask, why was she specifically instructed to say Maddie cried on the night of May the 2nd? Because they're shaping the narrative around May the 2nd, which was when it happened. And they spent 24 hours covering it up, which is why they were able to do very distant language, like not be drawn in any way, shape, or form into like. And they knew it was futile, like searching. Like they never mentioned searching, hunting, looking, pleading, bring my child back. Like, I'll forgive you. I don't even care what you did. Like if you've watched any distressed parents, and they're doing the very public statements, and like they're just a fucking mess. And even though they've got a written statement, they don't contain the emotion. Random words come out, they go off script. It's what happens when you're emotionally invested, right? So the only reason you wouldn't be emotionally invested is because the child's not alive. Like what you like, you can be numb from grief and in shock, and you can, but yeah. So I don't even see, even so, Bert Stalander, the foreign detective, sees this as possible evidence of early cover story being rehearsed or refined. The group initially panicked and mentioned multiple children, then unified around the single abduction narrative, right? But you've spent 24 hours planning what you're going to say, right? What happened on Wednesday night was not spontaneous. It's driving me crackers that people are making like, are not even just using like logical brain when they're thinking about stuff, especially Bert Stalander, who is kind of like spent 7 years, and found this witness and found all this evidence to prove that. I mean, shouldn't have taken 7 years to be like, okay, you tell me how they fucking forensically clean an apartment in 90 minutes. They didn't. But finding it for the Tuesday, right? So narrowing it down for Tuesday rather than any number of days prior. He did do that, right? Give him his dues, but also how he keeps slipping into the same as Grok kept slipping into but the reason why the nanny was saying this was because of the panic on Wednesday. There would not have been any panic on Wednesday. There would have been maybe heightened tension and fear. They didn't want to get found out, but not the same level of distress that my child has been taken. Right? Two very different things. And what we witnessed in the statements alone to the police and publicly was not panic at all. So, we also have institutional media angle, and I'll go through these ones faster because for me the time is the key, is the crux. The statement announced about Jerry and Kate, and then the timeline. That's, I would say, the smoking gun, right? However, so we do have to remember there's these dodgy shit around it. And obviously the fact that Bruckner, who is a fucking opportunistic, the 90 minutes you can't clean. Like they can't clean, neither can an abductee. So institutional media angle, Gordon Brown personally calling within hours, but remember Jerry's linked to his brother. Media cleared narrative versus Portuguese police never ruled out. 12-hour police delay is false claim. They were searching overnight, and it's still said publicly that the McCanns have been cleared, that the police didn't do anything. So McCann sued Amaral and Brown, but they haven't sued Hyatt, and they haven't sued Stalander, and that's indicative of the date of the 12th. Date of the 2nd, but the really strong evidence for the 2nd is the fact that Kate herself says Maddie was crying, and then the witness changed their mind. The witness that everybody knew about, the nanny, changed their mind to back it up. Right, those two bits of evidence indicate timeline change. Stalander, he found a witness. He found the bag witness person. Operation Grange was abduction remit only, strong impression of two-tier justice and shielding, right? No other child in the history of the British investigations into anything has spent 15 million on children. 15 million on one child. Ever. Sexual abuse motivation. So this is important. So we've got indicators through what Peter Hyatt picked up, but we also have the Gaspers. So what happened is the Gaspers were there in 2004. David Payne, he's the one who I called the pedo, the weirdo, the one earlier on, made a finger sucking and nipple circling gesture while talking about Madeleine, and most disturbingly, he did it to Jerry, and Jerry was not fazed at all. So he was doing the same as like they do on a porno where somebody's pretending like to have your cock in your mouth and you're sucking it off, and nipple circling, right? If anybody did that about my child, like you would have to pull me off them. Like I would just be raw emotion. Like the fact that Jerry wasn't fazed is very concerning. Now, the Gaspers did go to Leicestershire Police straight away. They reported this. Leicester Police withheld this from Portuguese. Well, they say that they had lots of tips and they just didn't get around to it, right? But yeah, so that feeds into the sexual abuse of Maddie, right? Like that's and again, it doesn't mean that my personal opinion, Kate was probably abused as well as a child, hence the talking about the door. But I mean, has she continued? Who knows? Is dad continue? I mean, has she just turned a blind eye, right? Which is what happens quite a lot, which is horrific, right? But and sometimes they're involved, sometimes the mums are involved. The fact that Jerry didn't like bat an eye, and that's what the Gaspers witnessed, and then they refused to so they all kind of used to like bath each other's kids and stuff before that point, and after that, whilst on holiday, the Gaspers refused to let David Payne or Jerry McCann bath their child, and then they distanced from the whole group and kind of just stayed well away from them, right? So they were concerned enough by what they witnessed, and that was one specific thing that stood out, but they were so concerned by what they witnessed during that holiday is they completely removed themselves from that circle of friends, and also protected their children like whilst on holiday. But that's pretty indicative of it being pretty fucking dodgy. And again, so leaning back into, crying, didn't call an ambulance. Like, it's just really heartbreaking. Really heartbreaking. You'd have to fucking sedate me in order to think. Maybe they were both, taking stuff. Who knows? Anyway, so with Bruckner, they do have phone evidence to place him there on the 3rd of May, right? So this is again why 3rd of May is really important, because then they can like pin it on the German guy. There's no forensic tie, no charges. I think he's just he's a sick fuck who shouldn't be out on the street, but I do not think had anything to do with this. There's actually no forensic link, no to 5A or the body. Phone data has him nearby. However, if it happens on May the 2nd, hold on. He just wasn't there. May the 2nd, he had to have been active in Praia de Luz the previous night, and it's never been strongly alleged or evidenced by prosecutors. So, and again, so this feeds back into the behavior patterns, right? So to abduct a child, planning, stalking, like his phone, like if you were going to pin it on somebody, you would want to, like, maybe the next person they pin it on will be like this. Somebody who's got a history of stalking, of interest in young children, whose mobile phone data pings them consistently over the few days previously, also potentially spotted by other people. So that's that. Somebody with that mindset, you could be like, okay, this guy was hanging around. He's somebody who maybe has been picked up before for hanging around the same area, particularly with young children. Like it doesn't fit his profile at all. But had they found somebody like that, it would be more compelling. So they say he could have been involved after, but it's speculative, has never been claimed by the investigators. His general predatory history in the Argyle still makes him a high-risk individual. Yeah, sure, but it's just not linked. And so that is why. But the timeline completely puts a kibosh on the German guy. If you needed the timeline to put the kibosh on him, his actual personality, his behavior patterns, his past criminal history, his capacity to have low impulse control, like low impulse control alone is enough to say he didn't abduct anyone from a high risk area where he had to break in, and there's no evidence of an actual break-in. Right, because he like the windows were open on the 2nd because the witness saw them, but they weren't open on the 3rd. They weren't open on the 3rd, so he would have had to break in. And there was no evidence of a break-in. Or he went in, he stole Maddie, and he cleaned it all up again, which is not opportunistic, right? Okay, so just to remind you, hypothesis 1, May 2nd, parental accident cover is 65 to 70% probability. So limitations, because we do have to, we have to make sure we're doing this properly. Public only sources, no private files. Circumstantial dominance, no body, but that's the same as everybody else. Potential source biases, so Stellander, advocate, and media spin. Trauma, trauma, people do behave differently. So yeah. So the only thing that, I mean, Jerry and Kate should have been investigated properly, should have been allowed to be investigated by the Portuguese police properly, and they should be investigated now. I am under the impression there's no statute of limitations on child death. So if they find the body, so they need to find the body. It's like William, so the acid bath murderer, is it John Haig, who kind of like went to prison, found out about the whole no body, no crime, and so he started like, killing people and then dumping them in acid. And it was only because he was tipping the acid out, and the fat hadn't dissolved properly, and then people noticed like big fat lumps. That's how they caught him, right? Because there was no body, so they changed it, right? So in the UK, even without a body, you can be tried for murder because of him. So that's my random serial killer knowledge coming into play. Okay, so I'm going to leave you on something which I'm finding very exciting. and will be kind of this week's blog post, but you guys get it. Let's leave on a high, heads up. So YouTube does really strange things. It kind of shows you like random videos, right? And I do like look at lots of different random stuff because I look at all the mental health stuff. You kind of look at like people breaking down new research. I'll watch random stuff for fun, like building horticulture beds in the garden. So my YouTube, like, I mean, I must look like somebody with multiple personality disorders, a dissociative identity disorder, if you looked at my like algorithms. And I do just like kind of click random stuff just for shits and giggles to kind of like confuse the algorithm. So a thing popped up about olive oil and using olive oil to well, they were using it for kind of like weight loss, and it was kind of like intriguing. I was like, what? I'll just put this on in the background, right? I'll just throw this on in the background while I'm washing the dishes. And I put it on, and to give credit to the guy, he was going into lots of research, and I was like, this is really interesting. All the different studies on inflammation and triggering the same kind of like pathways that Ozempic triggers. But he was going into it, but I was like kind of more, my ears pricked up a lot more when he was talking about like arthritis. And I was like, oh, that's cool because, I've childhood arthritis. I do work out and exercise, but I get injured a lot, and then you kind of can't do anything, and then you have to take a while to recover, and then you're starting again. So I even have like an elliptical, under desk elliptical machine. Like it's supposed to be like low impact, and my knees fucking kill afterwards. So what I was trying to work out was like, oh, okay, so maybe I can like have some olive oil, and that can be preventative. And the reason why I want preventative stuff that I can do is because I usually forget, right? So I love essential oils, but I always forget to use them preventatively, right? And actually, if you want to, if you put peppermint on before you do exercise and gym, it increases your energy. You're able to kind of work out longer and harder, right? But again, I forget. I know this information because I've looked into it all, but I forget, right? I just forget. And in this weather, there's another little peppermint little tidbit for you. If you put peppermint or eucalyptus on the back of your neck, and I forgot this today, right? It would have been useful today. Put it on the back of your neck. It'll bring your core body temperature down. So that's cool. Where's my peppermint? I need to go find it. So I know those things, but I always forget. So I'm a reactionary essential oil user unless I've put it in like my hand cream or but I mean, still that's reactionary, like because my hands are sore, then I put my cream. Yeah, I'm a reactionary user. I'm not very good at like routines when it comes to, some people are like, they spend hours like preening, and I just like the only thing I do to get rid of my makeup is like coconut oil on a cotton pad, reusable cotton pad, and then it goes in the wash and then it's done. So that's what I do before bed, and in the morning I will just do it again. That's it, right? That's my skincare routine. Okay, telling a porky. I did make a hand cream. Matt's got really bad hands at the minute. So I made him a hand cream, which has got beeswax, lavender and frankincense essential oil. It's also got coconut oil in there, and it's got beef tallow, because I heard about beef tallow being really great. It's really close to our skin. So beef tallow is like dripping, right? And so I made that, and I was just like, oh, I'm just going to use it on my face, right? The whole plan was I would make the hand one, and then I'd do a face one with some vitamin E in, and I couldn't remember where I'd put the vitamin E that I bought. So now I put that on as well, right? And then Matt did get me a you remember me saying a while ago, like I'd love one of those face masky thingies. He got me one of those. So that was quite a nice surprise. But I've literally only been using that for like, I don't know, 8 weeks. And I keep forgetting to use that. But to be fair, I'm really like my hair routine, like this I just need to kind of frame why why I'm looking to olive oil, because it's preventative. My hair routine, I just wash it. I dry this bit and under here, and that's it. Wash it, put a bit of conditioner on it, and just leave it. Right. There's far more important things to be doing in the world than be spending like 40 minutes dealing with what I look like. My makeup to go on takes like 3 minutes. Do you drink lots of water? That's the best thing you can do for your skin, just so you know. So for those of you who don't know, I am 42, so I don't look 42, which I think is quite nice. People keep telling me. So olive oil. I was very interested about kind of turning that into a routine, because you can have it like an hour before your meals. I think that's going to be a bit difficult for me, remembering to have it, because again, reactionary. Like I'm hungry, I need to eat. I don't go, oh, I'm hungry in an hour. So I've not quite worked that out, but I'm determined. However, the guy who was talking about it, he's like 6 foot, right? He's 6 foot something or other. And he's having like 3 tablespoons. He did an experiment where he did it for 10 days, 3 tablespoons a day, first thing in the morning, and then an hour before like the meals. So I had my first one this morning, which was interesting. I don't actually like olive oil, so this was quite like I don't have it on meals, or like I would prefer not to have it in the house. It like I cook with butter and lard, and beef dripping and goose fat, and like fat, not fake fat. So, and you should never cook with olive oil, by the way, because it's got a really low smoke point. Like it goes rancid really quickly. So don't. However, and the reason why I personally believe the reason why they tell you ever to do it is because they're trying to kill you. Right? It's toxic. It becomes toxic, is what it means when goes rancid and low smoke point. So I kind of watched the video yesterday while doing the dishes and thought, oh, okay. And then I went to the supermarket and I bought some olive oil. I actually spent like 20 minutes like staring at all the different types of olive oil, like turning it around, like, is this one that counts, right? So it's 100% olive oil. I think it's Odessa. It's Greek. It's 100% olive oil, so it's not got any like additives in there. And it's also, so it's extra virgin, and it's also like the superior quality olives. I don't know, but supposedly when I checked with Grok, it was the right one. So, and it wasn't that expensive, to be fair. So as I was pouring it out this morning, so I watched it yesterday, went and got the stuff, and plan was to do from today onwards. As I was pouring it out, and I did have a tablespoon this morning as well. I'm personally now going to drop to half a tablespoon 3 times a day, because when I was doing it this morning, then led me to do lots of other research about what kind of like got my little brain cells going. As I was pouring it out and thinking to myself, this looks disgusting. I really don't enjoy olive oil. I'm probably going to vomit. I'm probably going to have the same experience that people have when they kind of like neck the oysters. This is not going to be fun for anybody. But it's me who's going to clean it up, right? So I was all of that was going through my head while I was like pouring it out, and I was like, no, because if it helps my knees and then I can exercise consistently, that's going to make me feel like just loads better. It does. Right. I've been through the benefits of exercise for mental wellness before, like multiple times. Right. So that's my plan. And as I kind of knocked it back, I was thinking about my knees, arthritis, inflammation. And as I managed to swallow it, like this morning one went down like without like triggering anything. I was like, oh, this actually isn't that bad. And there was a bit of a peppery kick, which is supposed to mean like it's a good one. But it didn't make me cough or gag. But I do think sometimes people don't have spices and don't have pepper and stuff like that. So I think that will depend on your capacity to like taste stuff. So as I was thinking it, and I was thinking, wait a minute, inflammation. This is interesting for more than just like, for some people, like a quick body hack, right? Because when you have anxiety, a lot of the somatic symptoms, and somatic symptoms, they try to say it's all in your head, right? But anxiety isn't a psychology-based disorder. It is a biology-based disorder. It is your body thinking you are in threat, and that triggers your brain to behave in a different way, right? So if you're inflamed, there's lots of evidence with regards to inflammation, depression, and inflammation and anxiety. And I was like, oh, as I literally went from one side of the kitchen to the other to put the kettle on. And I'm not sure I was supposed to do that because I literally had my cup of tea after. And anyway, that's by the by. But as I was literally going across, I was like, I wonder if this is gonna, like, help for anxiety because it's the same mechanisms. Like, if you can reduce inflammation, if you can, a bit digestive, if it stops bloating, you also have so with, somatic symptoms of an anxiety, you get, like, unexplained aches and pains in your joints, inflammation. You also get bloating and IBS symptoms. So some of the biological symptoms of anxiety are already proven with olive oil to reverse those effects, right? So that got me thinking. And then I went and did some PubMeding, right? So I went to PubMed and I was absolutely disgusted by what I found, right? I found the first investigation into olive oil and inflammation was in 2001. The first investigation into olive oil for anxiety was 2020, and there've only been 3. One in 2020, one in 2024, and one in 2020. Oh, one in 22. One 2020, 22, and 24. And one of them is kind of not actually into anxiety, it's into anxiety-based behaviors as a kind of it was investigating it was actually investigating brain your brain kind of like slowing down and aging, brain aging and anxiety based symptoms, right? So considering, right, very real statistics, considering 22% of the population has a mental health disorder. 5.6% of the UK's population has anxiety, which is 1.2% higher than the global average. The fact that every 6 in 100 patients are diagnosed with general anxiety disorder every week in the UK. We've gone we went 19 years for the first investigation, and somatic symptoms with regards to inflammation and gut is not new, right? How did it take me? It took less than 24 hours for me hearing about olive oil and inflammation to go, wait a minute, that can be beneficial for anxiety. But it's taken researchers almost 20 years and they've done 2 studies, right? And the reason why they are not investigating it more is because when they tested it against fluoxetine, which is one of the most commonly prescribed anti-anxiety medications, it held its own at bringing down anxiety, right? And fluoxetine actually also triggers like depressive symptoms and lots of fucking dodgy stuff, right? 33% reduction in anxiety in just by taking like by mouth, right? Not as part of your food, by kind of like gobbling it. 33% reduction in anxiety. Just so you know, most mental health based pills, whether you're talking about fluoxetine or whether you're talking about antidepressants, have a 33% chance of working. Wait, there was 66% chance of doing nothing. Olive oil does the exact same. If you combine olive oil with a Brazilian diet, they saw a 56% reduction in anxiety in the group that they tested, right? And I didn't look into what the Brazilian diet was. But yeah, so 33% chance of olive oil alone. What I thought was more exciting was actually the study, or I say more exciting, was equally as exciting, and something that fluoxetine and other mental, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication doesn't do. The study into the brain aging. What they found is there was a rapid and sustained increase in neurogenesis. What does that mean? That means in the creation of new neural cells. Why is that powerful? Well, because when somebody's trying to overcome anxiety and depression, what they need to do is they need to do stuff, right? You can't just sit at home and it be fixed, right? You can reduce the symptoms by taking by taking olive oil, right? Because you're going to reduce the inflammation, you're going to reduce the biological reactionary stuff. But what you do need to do is also then rewire the mind so that it doesn't keep re-triggering, right? It's a kind of like re-triggering based on not actual real threats, right? Like if you're afraid of spiders and you see a spider, that's not a brain thing, that's your biology reacting to threat. However, if you think about a spider and then that's psychological, right? And both will happen, right? So if for anybody who's got like agoraphobia, apologies, right? Because I probably just triggered it. But it's a biological response to threat. Anxiety, that's all it is. General anxiety disorder is when you are having perpetual biological triggers to perceived threat. So there is no physiological threat, it's just a perceived threat. So by lowering the inflammation, by lowering the somatic based symptoms, is you will ease the overall threat level of your biology, and therefore you're less likely to be triggered, right? Which is cool. But what you want to actually do is you want to remove the perception of threat. So that's the work that you have to do. And if you're depressed, then you have to kind of deal with the thing. So both times you have to deal with the trauma, the actual underlying trigger, right? What's triggering your psychology. And the way that you do that is through work, right? That's why talking therapies matter, right? Is it enables you to develop skill. Well, good talking therapies enable you to develop skills that enable you to combat the perpetual inundation, just perpetual like broken record of bad thoughts that are triggering the biology nonstop, right? So what happens when you're going through therapy is what happens when you're not going through therapy. You learn something, you go to sleep, and your brain literally washes, and it does. Synovial spinal fluid washes your brain. It's quite cool though. It literally like washes the brain. And at the same time, you go through something called synaptic pruning. And this is something that happens a lot during puberty, right? Huge synaptic pruning. Anything that your brain's like, it's not important, we don't need it, don't worry about it, get rid of it. I mean, it's staying healthy, staying lean. Your brain tries to stay lean. 80% of the food you consume, the energy goes to your brain, right? So your brain is working fucking hard, but it doesn't always make the right decisions. So you go through synaptic pruning, which means when you wake up in the morning, you're trying really hard again. So this is why it takes between 4 and 6 weeks for new patterns to like new habits to kind of start to embed. And under stress, your natural like old habits will kind of leak out, right? Because you've only done like 6 weeks of new one. So what made me really excited about about olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, was that it would not only reduce anxiety symptoms, and there's been quite a bit of research into it with depression, and again, it's got positive indications with regards to reducing depressive symptoms. The thing that was really exciting is the fact that it would speed up the long-term effects of talking therapy, right? Because talking therapy takes forever. And it shouldn't take 30 years. And I have spoke to somebody who said that they've been with the same therapist for 30 years, and I would be like, fire that fucking therapist. And that's what I said to them. I was like, then they're just taking you for a fucking ride, because no therapy should take 30 years. I don't care how unwell you are. And I've dealt with extremely traumatized individuals, and they still only get me for 12 weeks. And then I kick them out and tell them to fucking deal with it. Right? Why? Because if you teach a man to fish, well, if you give a man a fish, then he can feed himself for a day. You teach a man to fish, he feeds himself for a lifetime, right? That's what I do. I teach people the therapeutic process, give them the skills, and then be like, go and live your life. And as shit happens, deal with it, right? Because that's how I did it. And I didn't have a therapist. You don't need a therapist. If you're ready to heal, you just need to know, like, how do I get there? Like, that's it. And I stand by my prior statements. My aim in life is to retire every single personal development person, every single fucking woo-woo spiritual leader, every single fucking mental health professional, because we should be taught all this shit in school. Like, this should be the same as, in order to get the beach body, you have to fucking eat the good food and you have to exercise. You should know exactly what you need to do every time you experience a traumatic event, right? This should not be fucking safeguarded information at the top of the fucking pyramid at all, right? At all. But olive oil will speed up, even if you haven't got a good therapist who is dedicated to giving you everything that you need so that you don't need them after 12 weeks, right? Like, if you've got somebody who's literally saying, like, here's the information, go and fucking do it. Even if you don't have that, and you've got somebody who's just drip feeding you basic bits of information, this is still going to enable it to stick faster. Or even if you're just doing like a new habit, or maybe you're learning to drive, or maybe you're learning any kind of new information, right? So even if you're not trying to lose weight, even if you don't have inflammation, even if you don't have anxiety, you don't have arthritis, if you are learning and you're on this kind of like exploratory, like rabbit hole journey, I recommend olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, because all of the information you're going to be consuming will be consumed better. What you're doing, the habits, whatever you're doing, is your brain is going to be making those connections better, faster, stronger. So this now comes down to dosage. 6 foot guy, I started this morning having a tablespoon, and then I kind of figured out halfway through the day, that's probably not sensible, because I'm not a 6 foot guy. I am a female, firstly and foremost, and men and women are different. Our water to body fat percentage are different. The way that we function is very different. So, and he just said, well, I do this, so you can do this too, right? Remember, you're a guy, I'm a girl. And thankfully, I figured it out after the first one, because I've heard you have some rear end troubles day 3. So what I'm doing is I'm going to have half a tablespoon 3 times a day, or that equivalent. I'm having it without food. It does slow down stuff. It does different stuff with food. I don't want it with food. I don't eat food that you can stick olive oil on. And we're going to a wedding on like the 2nd of June. Or hopefully July. Maybe it's July. I don't know. Anyway, and somebody, the groom, kind of messaged Matt earlier and was just like, I've got it in my head that Kate is a vegetarian. Is that correct? I just went, she is so far from vegetarian. She literally went carnivore just to get out of eating vegetables. 100% true. Like, I am not a salad or vegetable. I have never been a salad or vegetable person. I will have them like as an afterthought, right? Oh, I probably have a bit of vegetable. Carbs, 100%. Bad carbs, all the way. Vegetables, not so much. Potatoes, well, it's just carb, right? So, but yeah, actual good, bad carbs, yes. Good carbs, yeah. I don't mind berries, but vegetables, not so much. So, I don't have salads to kind of put olive oil stuff on, and I would never put olive oil on on pasta. It just sounds disgusting. So that's why the Mediterranean diet is purported to be one of the most beneficial, is because olive oil is integrated, but it's not cooked. Like it's raw, it's drizzled like non-stop. It also doesn't make you gain weight, right? So everyone's like, oh my god, it's like 3 million calories. It doesn't work the same way. Doesn't work the same way. It's not the same. Like all calories are not made equal, right? You will not put on weight if you just have like meat calories. You won't put on weight if you have olive oil calories, right? There's no carbohydrates in there. It's different. Oh my gosh, it's different. It stresses me out when people. It just reminds me of the conversation I had with a vegan, actually, a vegan who, I mean, I kind of like came back from the loo into this kind of conversation at a bar, and I will finish up after this because I need to finish because we're supposed to finish like an hour ago almost. This is how confused some people are about food and calories in and calories out, which is what Weight Watchers say and all of those other organizations. So we were out celebrating somebody's birthday. I went to the loo. I came back and I heard this is what they were saying. My Snickers bar is the same as your chicken breast calories, right? And it's calories in, calories out. I just went, wait, what? You think chocolates is nutritionally beneficial for your body as fucking chicken? Like, seriously. And I'd forgotten they were a fucking vegan. And I was like, why don't, like, it was like that is just like pure sugar. Like, that is sugar. That is like inflammation in a body. Like, I like Snickers. I haven't had one for a while, but I like Snickers. I was like, that's just like inflammation in a bar versus like lean protein, serotonin creating muscle, like that is like full of like every single essential amino acid your body needs and your brain needs to function, versus sugar give me a heart attack, right? And then they obviously got very angry. It isn't. I have been doing, it's not Weight Watchers, it's the other one, Slimming World. I have been doing Slimming World for 10 years and I know it's calories in and calories out. And I bit my tongue because what I was about to say was, you've been doing Slimming World for 10 years and you're still probably upwards of a size 18. That really doesn't bode well for the success of Slimming World or your knowledge of calories in, calories out, love. Like, it's the same as mental health therapy. Like, you should not need to be dieting for like 30 years of your life, right? At all. If you understand how food works, right? Don't get me wrong. I put on a bit of weight. I eat too many carbs. Like, I know. I know. And then I get injured. So when I'm not injured, is it kind of like a good balance? But when I get injured, I just still eat the carbs. Right? That's the bad thing. But that's why I went to carnivore diet, because it was easy. It was easier for me because I just stayed away from the carbs. But I'm after the anti-inflammatory effects. I'm very excited about those. And then I can keep up my exercise routine because I enjoy being active. And now my dogs are old. So I used to walk for 3 hours a day with the dogs and I can't do that. And I don't do that anymore. And I just sit on my ass. There you I understand the mechanism. I also understand that a Snickers bar is not the same as a chicken breast at all. And actually, when we were kind of at this party, it was like I'd been doing the carnivore diet for maybe like 4 months, and I was like probably a stone lighter than I am now. So it was only like 18 months ago. But I got very injured last year, and it kind of went. I just didn't want. I ate a lot of Christmas. Drank a lot of Christmas without being able to move, which isn't useful. So that's where we are. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do hope you enjoyed the Maddie thing. Like, I enjoyed looking and I enjoyed hunting. I enjoyed having a nose. I am still very surprised that people have not drilled in more on like just the nanny statement. I personally believe the nanny statement alone is like the pure linchpin for everything. I mean, everything else kind of like comes together, but just proof of sedation, like all of it is in that one teeny tiny sentence. Madeleine and 4 or 5 other children are missing. Like, why? Because it just contradicts everything. And that she also then indicated that Maddie was crying the night, right? So she leans into the fact that the sedation, she leans into the fact that the timeline's wrong. Like, it's just that nanny. So anyway, thank you so much. Have yourselves an amazing week. We will get back to normal next week and do kind of boring world ending shit probably. And it won't be, I want to do JonBenet Ramsey, the same depth as I've been very interested in that case for a very long time. So that will be interesting. I think it'll be interesting. You can join if you want. You don't have to, obviously. But thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying the lovely lobsterifying weather. I shall see you same time